Haere mai ki te kaunihera o Rotorua. Good morning. Welcome to our last Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting for the year. I would like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed. Depending how we'll go, we'll take a break at 11 a.m. and lunch at 1 p.m. Just a reminder as well to please have your mobile phones turned off or on silent as well. I'd like to welcome our team from the airport who will be presenting to us later, and also our staff and Shirley. Lovely to see you here too. To start us off, may I please ask Councillor Maxwell to do a karakia for us.
Morena, kia ora koutou katoa. For anyone who wants to say it with me, the karakia is on page 5. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro, tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa. Haumi e, hui e, tai kia. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor Maxwell, ngā mihi nui ki a koe. I'd like to call for any apologies. I do have apologies for Mr. Waru and Ms. Rothwell for lateness. Any others? There appear to be none. May I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Yates, seconded by Ms. Spray. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest this morning? Are there any urgent items not on the agenda? There appear to be none. We'll move straight to our confirmation of the minutes of the Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting, 4th of November 2021, to be confirmed as true and correct. May I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Okawa-Tate, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Appear to be no alterations needed. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Now, we did have on the agenda a presentation for the Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre. We're just going to defer that into 2022 when we can have more of an update then. So we'll postpone that into our next meeting, and we will go straight to our staff reports, which is on page 13. For the financial performance, so may I please have a mover and a seconder that the report financial performance for the 4 months ended 31 October 2021 be received. Moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Bentley. All those in favour, please say aye. And I'd like to welcome Thomas Colley, our DCE, to overview his PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors and board members. Financial update for the 4 months to the end of October. During the month of October, we've had a bit of a swing to our overall result to the negative. So you'll see there that the pressures that we've been talking about probably for the last 3 months are really starting to manifest now into the overall result. So fees and charges in particular are starting to show the impact of that COVID has had, in particular to our events and venues space and to our parking. And our operational costs are under a little bit of pressure as a result of Three Waters reform, the waste management, legal challenge, the housing strategy, and in particularly the resilience grants that were paid out and our security patrols. So a continuation of the theme. What we have seen though is that at the end of September we were about $100,000 better than budget, and we have seen a substantial swing probably to the negative at the moment. Overall though, it's not a negative theme across all of our activities, so the pressure is really contained into the 2 overall activities, so community wellbeing and into our district development, and so it really is a reflection that the majority of that pressure is supporting our housing initiatives and our community safety strategies. The main issue that actually has come up is having a much better understanding now and line of sight on our revenues and the impact that COVID is having, and in particular to our parking and our events and venue space. So what we are seeing is that the parking revenues are suppressed by about 30% based on where the budgets were, and that's probably no reflection of not having any Auckland or Waikato visitors over the last number of months, or actually close to 100 days. So we are seeing the effects of that. And in the Energy Event Centre in particular, and the event space, a significant number of bookings have either been cancelled or deferred into next year, when hopefully there's a little bit better understanding of how these events can take place. And so what we're seeing is obviously that the revenues there are down to close to 60% of where they were expected to be. Overlaying that as well, or underpinning that, was the challenge set out in our LTP, where we saw a bit of an uplift across the board in our fees and charges, just to reflect where those fees and charges should be against our funding policies, and some of that is not materialising either, but that is pretty minor compared to the effects of those other two. So at this point of time, what we are expecting is that overall our revenues from our fees and charges are likely to be 1.9 to 2 million down on budget by the end of the year. However, there's more pressure that we're currently facing as well. So obviously on the left, there's COVID and the impact that it's having on our community, and the impact that it has on our organisation and what we need to do. So at the moment, we do have staff that are supporting the DHB with regards to the COVID response, with regard COVID in our community. What we're seeing is an uplift in the amount of resource and effort that's going into housing in particular, and planning and infrastructure. And I think later today you'll see a bit of a presentation of what that looks like and the effects of that. We have recently provided QE Health with a grant to support their build with regards to their new facility. We're also under pressure from legal costs. So there's obviously the landfill case that was there, plan changes with regards to our district plan to support our housing, internal legal matters as well as housing and consent notification challenges. On top of that, we also have a response to our community around community safety. So you would have seen what we're planning to do with CCTVs. We've increased the numbers of our inner city patrols, and we're constantly responding to the community with regards to helping improve the safety of parts of our city. Now, in any normal year, if one or two of these hits, I'd sit here in front of you and I'd be quite confident that at this time of year we'd put mitigations in place, and I'd feel fairly confident that we could end the year on budget. With COVID and with this amount of challenges that we're facing, I think short of turning something off, it will be incredibly difficult to offset this by the end of the year. And so this is probably signalling to you that the things that we've been talking about probably for the last 2 to 3 months in this chamber around our financials are now starting to manifest and will likely have an impact on our end of year result. And saying that, we will do all the things that we need to do to try and offset that, but because of the multiple challenges that we face and the underlying COVID impact on Rotorua and New Zealand, it will be incredibly challenging. With regards to our capital spend is progressing quite well in places. So our underlying renewal program is quite accelerated. So the renewal of particularly of our infrastructure, roading, Three Waters is progressing well, and some of our growth projects with regards to increasing resilience of our water supplies and duplication for Linmore, etc., are well underway. But some of our other larger projects and strategic projects have been impacted by COVID and not progressing maybe at the pace that we would hoped, which is probably understandable. So in a year where we probably plan to have our biggest capital delivery year for quite some time, we are now forecasting about a 70% delivery of that underlying program. And in particular, the reduction is down to 4 main projects. So the economic recovery program of work. As you know, the large portion of that funding has been set aside to the housing strategy and how to support that. You'll be aware that we currently have an application in for the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund, and out of that will probably fall costs that fall upon us to help support that. So it'll likely be that that program will support that when that comes through. The Rotorua Museum is still continuing on with its detailed design. The Aquatic Centre, again, just getting into the detailed design, but you'll recall that that project was approved on the basis of external funding. So those external funders are still being sought, and the Rewa Forest, with regards to the visitor centre of that component, is currently sitting with the underlying landowner in mana whenua as to how to decide on how to do that. But the rest of that project is now 99% complete. I will foreshadow, though, that that 70% or 73% delivery will still be a challenge. I think if you look out on that graph into the future years, you'll see that there's a significant uplift in spend and activity, and just overlaying that uncertainty with regards to the ability to get resources, materials, and all the things that New Zealand is facing as a whole with regards to the impacts that COVID is having across the board, that may put pressure on our ability to deliver against that 70%. So overall, where we are forecasting for the year end to be, it's likely that our operations will be impacted to the 4 to 5 million. We will obviously work towards mitigating that, but because of the number of challenges that are facing us, that will be difficult. Our capital spend will be down as well, with the majority of that being deferred into the next fiscal year, and as a result, our debt will be down as well. But our debt may need to be used to support our operational shortfalls if we're not able to mitigate those. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this report. It's a judicious report in a difficult set of circumstances. I appreciate that. The fees and charges, my question is, is there any possibility that fees and charges will recover? And if it is unlikely, is there any possibilities of adjustments to expenditure and tapering off debt, reducing debt? Because the interest charges are going to be rising fairly soon. Care to comment?
I think where the revenue lines are under pressure, no, they will not likely recover for the remainder of the fiscal year. I think New Zealand will be living obviously under the traffic light system, and with Rotorua currently being in red, those places that are under pressure will not likely be able to change the way that they operate going forward. With regards to the ability to reduce costs, because they're clustered in places like the Energy Events Centre and parking, the costs there are pretty fixed. So we would have to look at parts of our organisation that are more flexible, but what we have signalled is, we do squeeze as much as possible, so we're probably at the point now where we would have to stop doing something to be able to offset it. And that would obviously need to be a directive from yourself as to what area of council services you'd be comfortable stopping. And then there's the overarching challenge of, we're in COVID, the community expects more from us, and so as they expect more from us, it's very unlikely we could therefore reduce our services. With regards to the cost of debt, just refresh your memory back to last month, where I did do a presentation on our treasury policy, and I did show that the way that our debt is structured and the repricing of our debt will take some time before we start feeling the effects of those increased cost of borrowings.
Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson, followed by Her Worship the Mayor, Councillor Bentley, then Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Thomas, I'm not sure whether it's questions for you, but I've got a question on two aspects of coming out of this update. One is in respect of the costs around legal challenges, and one in particular that I've had some feedback on. So I'm aware of some deep pocket judicial challenge, if I can frame it that way, to in particular the consenting for homeless housing in motels. And given that we're in a collaboration around that initiative with other agencies, is there a shared approach to meeting the legal costs of addressing those challenges? That's my first question. And my second question, just on the staff, the savings through staff vacancies. I'm mindful of the
Should we answer the first one?
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll give them the second one.
JP is probably best placed to answer the question around the judicial review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in regard to that, we're the consent authority, so they've lodged a consent with council. So at the moment, the approach that's been taken by groups has been to seek action against council, and potential of judicial review is against council.
Thank you. So those costs sit with this organisation. And so, Madam Chair, my second question was in relation to the staff vacancies resulting in the savings of 474k. Mindful of the talent pool out there, but sort of balanced against, I guess, those savings is I'm mindful of the pressure on staff that we have and resultant delays in projects from capability. So what is the plan? Are we going to continue down that path? Or are we going to address those vacancies? I don't think we can. My question is, are we going to continue to rely on holding vacancies as a saving, as a cost saving?
No, our current strategy is actually not to hold vacancies. We're actively trying to recruit and fill them because we're incredibly busy at the moment, and we're about to get busier. The challenge that we have is staff retention at the moment in an incredibly competitive environment, and attracting the right talent to us as well. And just recently saw a bit of a stat that has shown that overall probably not-for-profit and government organisations are probably the ones that are experiencing the larger vacancies now, whereas the commercial environment is able to respond a bit easier to those challenges of putting salaries up, attracting talent and passing those costs back on to the consumer a lot easier than what we are. And so what we are finding is it's becoming a little bit harder. So Joe and the team are just working on obviously the attraction and retention strategy, and looking at all the other options available with regards to benefits and packages to attract the talent that we need. So I would just signal, though, that while we obviously have retention problems, it's not unique to us. It's not an underlying issue with our organisation or the culture. It's just that that's the great resignation you would have seen, the term that's being used, and the challenges that is facing all organisations in New Zealand.
Thank you. Your Worship, the Mayor.
Thank you, Thomas, and I think you're very wise to signal where we're heading, because it's such uncertain waters ahead of us with Code Red that could be a little bit longer than some of us are hoping for. Which of the capital projects actually keeps you awake at night, Thomas?
Oh. A lot of them, really. More so at the moment around availability of resources. We're currently competing in a market that's probably heavy with government projects and funding. So everyone's competing for the same resources, and then overlaying obviously the delay in materials and those sorts of things. I think at the moment, though, we're not seeing any COVID impact across our larger projects, so they're all well under control with good lead times. You'll recall a little bit of an issue around Shimpak recently, but nothing too alarming. So.
Thank you. And just a comment too, I heard you mention, and I'm sure it will come up in the operations report, but I'm pleased that we're assisting Lakes DHB with the COVID response. That's what a decent community has to do in a time of crisis. And I'm just a bit concerned about the capacity gap left behind, because I'm aware that it's all hands in there together, and work programs that those staff that are now seconded across are going to be a challenge to the organisation. So that is the right thing to do. And well done, Jeff and the team, for actually seeing that that's what a community must respond. To me, it's very like a wartime crisis when we all manage together for the benefit of our community. So well done, and we'll bear the costs.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Thank you for your report, Thomas. Under the expenditure part of it, you've got professional fees with relating to Three Waters reform. I guess this is consultancy fees. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do we have a written report from them, or that can be shared amongst councillors?
That's in the information that was all provided to you with regards to our positioning on the Three Waters with regards to the consultation with the government.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Thomas. Look, my question was around the legal cost, but Deputy Mayor already asked that question and was answered. So thank you.
Councillor Rakawa-Tate, followed by Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Thomas. I guess we're not the only council throughout the country that's been, or certainly not, that's been impacted, but obviously as a tourism city, etc., and also the social impacts in the last 18 months. We tend to look at the cost for the economy in terms of the economic impacts, but social impacts actually cost this nation millions, billions actually each year. So I just want to ask you, in terms of the debt and the support perhaps that may be needed for the operational shortfall, are you seriously looking then to borrow more prior to the end of the financial year?
Yeah, there is a potential that if we're not able to offset those costs, which is very unlikely, that we will have to draw on our debt to support a part of our operations. So it could be in the range of the $4 to $5 million.
To cover it, most of it?
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, my question follows on from Councillor Rakawa-Tate. So it was just a question around the fact that we're actually using debt to fund operational shortfalls rather than perhaps looking at other mechanisms, because I know at the beginning you said that it would be difficult to do to meet budget other than by turning off something. So is that strategy preferred rather than borrowing for funding operational?
So to be clear, councillors, we don't borrow to fund our operations. Where we do, it's situations like this where we're not able to offset. I think coming back to the second part of your question, and I think I'll tie it down to the Deputy Mayor, part of that is already being offset by staff vacancies. So, we can't hold our vacancies because if we continue to hold our vacancies, we will struggle to deliver against our services. And also at a time where the DHB is contacting us for assistance, and we've seconded a number of staff off to support them. So our ability to respond by reducing the responsive part of our operating budget is very tough, because that responsive part of our operating budget is being fully deployed because we're having to respond to our community in challenging times. So to be able to therefore offset that, you would probably have to stop doing something significant. And I'm not sure that's a palatable position for our community at the moment. And I'm not sure what that would look like.
Thank you.
Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Thomas. Thomas, firstly, I'd like to say thank you for a whole year of great support to us in what you've provided us, in making some good decisions. My question is probably, I don't know whether it does, but it follows from what Deputy Mayor Dave Donaldson spoke about, the $477,000 savings that we had from having some gaps in staff. I just wondered whether it was significant or insignificant that some of the work, because of the less staff that we've got, that we are outsourcing some of the things that need to be still done because we have deadlines, and where does that cost come from?
So, Councillor, we are in a position where we're having to outsource and use consultants to cover duties that were once covered by staff because of vacancies, and so that cost is being reflected in the financials with regards to the increase in our consulting spend. So the two are, I guess you could argue, would slightly offset each other, but generally a consultant costs more than a staff member.
And just like to add to that, that if there's some big projects that don't keep you asleep at night, and if you want to go for your mountain bike ride, let you know that your local dairy is stocking plenty of Gatorade, berry, no sugar.
Yes, thank you. And I think the only project that does keep me up at night is obviously building more Grade 5 trails in the forest. But
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask a supplementary. Just reflecting on the nature of our programs at the moment, we've got a fair commitment to the housing program, which is essentially dealing with supporting homeless. Is it possible that that might be a source of slowdown with regard to expenditure, or indeed stopping bringing more homeless into Rotorua? Thank you.
Look, I'll take this opportunity to clarify that the work that JP and his team are doing is not to support homeless. The work is to identify areas of Rotorua for development, to work with those landowners to make plan changes, to work with regional council to work on stormwater issues, and to free up more land for building houses. And there's a whole range of houses. Part of that is Kaingora, but part of that is obviously intensification into our CBD, and it's on a whole range of housings. That internal team is not sitting there focused on homeless coming into Rotorua and dealing with those. I'm not sure whether the Chief Executive wishes to add.
I think to answer that well, that I would.
Oh, hang on, swap.
The only thing that I would add is that the work that our teams are doing is in fact to mitigate any impacts actually of emergency accommodation in the city. You'll recall that actually there was an intensive piece of work done in conjunction with the government agencies to put in place a hub that would actually screen people as to what their needs were when they are being placed into emergency housing, that government agencies would actually look to better fund and support community services to ensure that people are well supported. That's the sort of work that we're doing at the moment. As that is actually being put into place, the work of that team has actually started to be more centred on longer-term, medium-term housing solutions. So fundamentally, I don't see that there is in fact any ability to achieve a slowdown or a drop in that particular area. What we have also, though, done, and I think the Mayor quite rightly pointed out, that we're also now supporting government agencies and the DHB in terms of a COVID response for next year. That's meant that we've had to look at some of our work programs to reprioritise them and to allow people to ensure that people are freed up in order to be able to provide additional support across that area. But what I would say is that you're going to see in the second part of this meeting a view as to what's been achieved in the last 12 months. There's an opportunity at the end of this meeting, I would put to you, to actually reflect on what you've seen that the organisation has achieved and to reconsider whether any of those achievements were in fact unnecessary or maybe needing to be reprioritised in the next 12 months. You know, that's the nature of the work of the organisation, and I think you can only really consider that with full knowledge of what is it that this organisation's been doing. And so that's possibly a better discussion to have at the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Well, I will read out these next two recommendations and then open us up for any discussion that you may want to have on those. So the next recommendations that we have for this are that the committee notes COVID-19 and changes in alert levels are having a detrimental effect on revenue. And also 3, that the committee notes that in pursuing the agreed long-term plan priorities, increased costs are forecasted, and in particular in housing and community safety outcomes. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Rotorua, seconded by Councillor Yates, and I'll open that up for discussion if anyone had any, not just questions, but any comments on this as well, bearing in mind that those are quite significant changes, and we've seen through the presentation by Thomas what impact that's having on our financials. Councillor Yates.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd just like to congratulate you and your team, Thomas. It hasn't been an easy year at all, with this being our last meeting for operations and monitoring. Where you've got us to, you've kept your continuous communication all along about what this could look like. We now know what it looks like as of today. So he mihi nui tēnei kia koutou. So look forward also to seeing what 22 might bring. But in saying that, we do still have some work to get through, especially over the summer period when we might be going to different alert levels. I'm sure you've already got a map on that worked out. So kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just a question in relation to point 3, where it says that we're noting increased costs are forecasted in relation to community safety outcomes. I thought that we had increased the budget by another 500,000 to 1.3 million, so that are we suggesting that we're going to be spending much more than that, given that we had quite a big presentation from the team at the last O&M meeting around community safety?
Yep, so we did have an uplift in the budget, and we're also seeing an uplift in the level of service above what that provided for.
So is that in relation to City Guardians or other additional
City Guardians, CCTV, yep.
Above what we
budgeted for,
okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I did just have one just regarding the agreed long-term plan priorities. In the presentation, you mentioned the health grant that we gave to QE. In the discussions, I noted my deep concern about a significant grant that was not budgeted for or agreed to in our long-term plan. So perhaps if we could just have a bit of background on how that came to be. I know that the council media release that came out in August mentioned that it came from the Economic Recovery Fund, but that $1 million is quite significant. So I wonder whether yourself or the Chief Executive would like to just elaborate on how that came to be when we already are under such pressure to our financials. Yes, Your Worship.
This was well canvassed at the time and well debated at the time, and I've no objection to our financial officer reporting it, but we need to go back to that time, which was pre-Delta, and Delta has had a devastating effect on us. And I'd like to make some more comment at the end, because this is one ray of hope in our community.
So just remind the councillors that we were approached by QE quite some time ago now with regards to providing assistance into their new build. So many will know that they are scheduled to relocate from the old World War II style building into a new facility. And they've with regards to increased construction costs and timelines and all those sorts of issues, their budgets came under a bit of pressure, so they've sought assistance in conjunction with the Rotorua Energy Charitable Trust and MB Council has obviously agreed as part of that process to provide funding assistance to support them to complete that construction. And the decision was made to use the Economic Development Fund portion of that funding, which was $1 million. From an accounting perspective, that fund was a capital project that was debt funded, and we're just now reflecting that it's actually an operational cost that's reflected through our profit and loss statement.
Thank you, Thomas. We have Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thomas, can you confirm for me whether we're on track for the children's playground opening before Christmas?
I believe it is on track and it's looking good. Yep.
Okay, that's confirmation.
Councillor Yates. Oh, Kapai. Was there anyone else? Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question of clarification on the point you raised. So, Thomas, the QE funding of the $1 million, to describe it as unbudgeted, was it unbudgeted or was it a reprioritisation of the Economic Recovery Fund?
It was a reprioritisation. It's when we reprioritise that, we just have to reflect that it's an operating cost now and not a capital component. And so that's obviously a line item we didn't budget for in our operations. So it's just reflecting in that.
Thank you. And I think my point was on the QE was that it wasn't identified prior in our long-term plan priorities. So given that at the time we had just completed the audit of our long-term plan, so it was just to note my disappointment that not long after we had a $1 million opportunity come to the table that I didn't agree with at the time. But we'll carry on and we'll go to Councillor O'Kawatate.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to say that obviously the business environment in which we're operating right now, I mean, it's changed completely and it will do so for some time yet. So we have to understand that we've got to be in it for the long haul. And also I would say that we cannot afford to lose our nerve. We just have to work things through, make the necessary adjustments and recognise that things will eventually right themselves, although that may be sometime in the future. But I would just say that, thank you, Thomas, for, keeping a vigilant eye over everything, but we do have to hold our nerve for sure. So I'm happy to move. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Kawatate. That was moved by you, seconded by Councillor Yates. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried. And thank you very much, Thomas, and please go back and thank your team in finance too. It's been a very tough year and especially a tough 4 months as well as we deal with, like her worship mayor said, the introduction of Delta into our community and whatever that new one is too. So thank you very much, Thomas. All right, it is my pleasure now to welcome our team from the airport. I'd like to invite Logan Charders-Lee and Peter Stubbs. Very exciting to have you here with us for the first time, Logan, and good to see you again, Peter. I'll just ask for a mover and a seconder that the report operational update for Council from Rotorua Airport be received. Moved Councillor Kai Fong, seconded by Ms Rothwell. All those in favour, please say aye. And over to you guys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa. And thank you for introducing our interim Chief Executive, Logan Charders-Lee. He comes to us as our General Manager of Infrastructure and Operations. And can I say publicly, he's doing a fantastic job in the role, so well done. Councillors, we've covered to a large degree the materials that you've seen and are about to hear at our AGM last month, where we gave some short presentations from our senior leadership team, plus in the case of our financial statements, our Chair of the Board's Audit and Risk Subcommittee, Danielle Old, spoke. But I'm also conscious of the fact that some councillors weren't able to make to the AGM, and of course members of the public are also listening as well. So for that reason, we're here, and Logan and I will do our best to pick up the highlights. I want to start with some big picture observations. COVID has obviously accelerated and re-emphasised the need for us to lower our cost of funds and also to build our non-Air New Zealand revenue. And building that revenue is obviously critical, and you'll be broadly aware of the projects that we are working on. But equally importantly is sequencing. So we spent the first half of the year working on developing feasibility studies and business cases for the projects that we've got underway. The second part of the year has really been tied up in consultation with Air New Zealand about landing charges, a very important component of our top line. We have concluded consultation, and we expect at our board meeting on the 17th of December to sign off in terms of landing charges for the next 4 to 5 years, Logan? Yep. That's obviously important because that allows us to then build up future revenue projections. That in turn allows us to feed that into our treasury policy and into our debt limit forecast. That in turn, early in the new year, will enable us to get into further consultations with Thomas and, of course, the local government funding agency to refinance our current debt arrangements. The idea then that we'll have both refinanced debt plus a fund that we can use to deploy to initiate our commercial projects. A couple of sidebar observations as well. On the input cost side, consultations are beginning on a new airways pricing framework for 2022 to 2025. Ordinarily, you would expect that those costs would be passed on to the airlines, but our friends at Airways are full of surprises, so we'll see what the new year brings. The other thing I wanted to mention in terms of externalities that are material is that the Civil Aviation Bill is currently going through Parliament, and that's a once-in-a-generation review, so it's very important. We've got 3 major concerns that we lodged a submission about last night. And for any of you who are interested, a copy of our submissions and a one-pager that summarises the key issues that we've got is either about to be or is on our website. Secondly, I just wanted to take the opportunity publicly on behalf of the Rotorua Airport family to acknowledge the passing of Tony Marks, who you may recall was a board member of the airport. He passed away in late June. He was a highly valued member of the board. He was also much loved by the wider team. His love of life and particularly stories was infectious. He was born in England. He was Harvard University trained. He had part-time careers in football and managing a rock band. Indeed, he told me that his highest achievement was managing a rock band that opened for the Supremes. And as I look around the room, I realise that only Councillor Donaldson and I probably are old enough to know who the Supremes are. He had a 40-year corporate career in 4 countries, particularly in the aviation sector, where he worked for Air New Zealand, Virgin and Origin. I don't think anyone else had that degree of experience. He had a long list of directorships spanning 14 years, and importantly, he contributed right up to the end. I asked for his views most days during his last months. Tony was always happy to share his views, and indeed, some of those views were expressed in what I could only be described as sinus-clearing terms. And I certainly hope that our board work will make Tony proud, but I also wanted to take the opportunity to welcome and to thank you for appointing Grant Lilly, who is, I think, a near-perfect replacement for Tony, given his experience and expertise. And indeed, the day before he died, having reviewed all of the applicants, Tony indicated to me that he was his absolute top choice. I also wanted to acknowledge the work and legacy of Mark Gibb. The airport has changed significantly during his stewardship. We developed a master plan, completed the Emergency Operations Centre, developed closer relations with Ngāti Anuku Kapaka, and also undertaken a terminal redevelopment. I particularly want to acknowledge his leadership during COVID and the airways challenges. And Mark really laid the groundwork for a more sustainable airport business. It won't surprise you to know that over the last few years, the airport's operating environment has really become significantly more complex. Safety and operations have become even more important. Passenger demands have increased, and commercial dictates continue to be important as well. But as for that reason, I think that Mark's greatest legacy is the creation of a senior leadership team. Not only, of course, Logan as our General Manager of Operations and Infrastructure, Blair Sim, who is a commercial manager and you may recall worked previously, is an ex-banker, worked previously for Rotorua Economic Development. You know you're getting old when you worked with the father of the people that now work at a company that you chair. And finally, Jane Marsh, who is an immensely capable and highly qualified safety management system manager. Just a quick update on our search for Chief Executive. We were very lucky to have received 50 applications for the role. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that the new Chief Executive is Nicole Brewer. If that name is familiar to you, it's because she was our Chief Executive in 2015 and 2016. And she left us only because she went away to have Zara. Fortunately, Zara starts school next year, and Nicole emerged her way through the 50 applications to get to the top of the pile. So having originally appointed her and having worked with her extensively, I'm absolutely delighted. And I think it's fair to say that Nicole is the first and second female Chief Executive of an airport in New Zealand, so we're thrilled about that. Finally, just before I hand over to Logan, I just wanted to thank you all for your ongoing support. I particularly wanted to thank Her Worship the Mayor for her ongoing wise counsel and unstinting support of the airport. We're very grateful for that. But I also wanted to mention Councillor Kai Fong and you, Madam Chair, as well for your ongoing support. I wanted to thank Logan and his management team, and also perhaps equally importantly to the board for their ongoing commitment under trying circumstances. No one in their right mind would be in a governance role in aviation, but fortunately none of my board members are in their right minds. Logan.
Good morning all. So I'll just walk us through the year-end FY21 report. Now I take the report as read, so I'll just go through the key items in the presentation itself. So financial KPIs and passenger numbers. So over the FY21 period, we forecast a deficit of 731,000 before depreciation. Pleasingly, through some asset revaluation work and a stronger recovery than expected in passenger numbers, we're able to report a net surplus of 1.3 million pre-depreciation. Following depreciation and before tax, we budgeted a net deficit of 3.275 million when we were able to report a deficit of 1.1. Passenger movements, we featured quite a strong recovery, again from forecast, with some sectors seeing a month-on-month basis higher than the FY19 period, or the last normal period that we had, which has been very pleasing. We did see a decrease in around 600 aircraft movements a year, and that's a big contributor to the L3 flight training school in Hamilton closing and moving to Portugal. Key achievements through the year, so spoken about the strong passenger number recovery. We hosted exercise at Waisau in May. Now that was the annual RNZAF pilot training camp. Had a number of councillors come through that event and were invited to a graduation dinner, as it were. We saw a dozen pilot trainees, around 60 support staff and 15 contractors. We worked very closely with the Defence Force to make that exercise work, and the comments that we've received from the Defence Force and other defence agencies has been really outstanding. They held a targeted recruitment day in the middle of the exercise for high achievers and potentially interested defence personnel in high schools. And a fantastic result to see that 6 students that attended that day have either now gone through their basic training for the Air Force or are enrolled to go through that training as a sole output of that event, which was excellent. Our BCP has continued to function well through COVID. We continue to heavily rely on the support of our travelling public and our staff. Without our people, we wouldn't be able to have got through what we have in the last 12 to 24 months, and that's a really true testament to the team that we have. We were nominated for the Tourism Leisure category in the New Zealand Property Council Awards, which was judged the other night. I'll pass that result shortly. We were up against the Britomart Hotel, New Plymouth Airport, which was a $17 million upgrade, and a number of high-profile Auckland buildings. Moving through, So moving into our FY22 key actions, I know the dying one is the Property Council Awards. So we were awarded merit in that category, whilst it wasn't the supreme award for that, given the competition that we were against, and we were classed as the lowest expense redevelopment that was held. Merit is an incredibly pleasing result for us, given that we're up against $200 million building projects. So I think that's a testament to Mark's legacy and to the Rotorua community. We'll be looking at holding Ride the Runway in February 2022, and that's a big event. Usually we'll see circa 1,000 registrations for that, depending on what the traffic light status is. Yeah, we'll see. But here's hoping that we can hold that event and hold it to its fullest extent. We'll be looking to advance our additional strategic projects that our commercial manager and board have been working on. Interestingly enough, moving potentially to freight opportunities and emerging aviation technologies. Rotorua is a hub of innovation in New Zealand, and the airport would like to see that transgress out towards our way as well, as there's a lot of technology and a lot of drive and demand in that. We will be finalising our aeronautical charges review hopefully very soon at the December board meeting, and following that we will be then advancing our funding restructure. So Peter and I are happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Logan and Peter, for your update and your presentation, and we really appreciate you coming to us at the end of the year for this update. Can I just firstly say it's great to put a face to the name Logan. I think most of us around the table have seen the article, and I would like to congratulate you as well, being the youngest airport CEO in the country. It's a major achievement, and with your background in the first, as a first responder and in the services, especially acknowledging that the airport won the Essential Business of the Year awards at the Business Awards last year. I think there's a perfect connection. I have a couple questions. My first question is around the Airports Council International, and I'm just wondering, I don't see that the Rotorua Airport is a member of that. However, I do see other regional airports in the country are a member of that as well. Doesn't sound like it's on.
Perhaps if you want to answer that first question while he gets another mic.
Yep, no problem. So, Councillor Wang, so the New Zealand Airports Association, which is the industry board which we are a member of, is a member of Airports Council International. And through that, we're currently going through, as the ACI's main drive for the next in their Vision 2030 report is carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions reduction programs. So we're currently going through the scoping exercise with our commercial manager to meet the ACI's ACERT, which is their accredited carbon emissions reduction trend monitoring program. We are going through that. So whilst we're not directly a member, we are a member through association with the New Zealand Airports Association.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And that leads on to my my next question. That was around the airport carbon accreditation that links in with that organisation, because I do see that Christchurch Airport has done a lot of work in that space, especially as Councillor Donaldson mentioned to me this morning, the solar farm and their work in the solar and renewables area, and what Rotorua Airport was doing in that space, particularly focusing on our climate action plan, being, transport is a big emitter in our district, but because we are a regional airport, air transport is not as high. In our climate action plan, there's not actually a link or specific mention to the airport and its initiatives in the climate action space.
I'll answer the first part of that question. So in regards to Kowhai Park at Christchurch, which Malcolm Johns announced yesterday afternoon, so RAL, through our strategic projects, are working on a number of initiatives, moving through a carbon accreditation process to really understand, because it is a complex business to understand, especially when we have our partner airlines that have their own carbon reduction processes. We need to determine how much of that is an impact for us, our actual emissions, etc. So Blair's doing quite a bit of work on the background of reaching, or we're currently scoping moving to a selection process of a carbon reduction plan, as there are many, and some are tailored to transport industries versus hospitality. So I would like to say in the next report we'll have an update for that. At this time we haven't fully selected a program that we're going to be working through. However, due consideration will be given to it to meet RLC's carbon action plan.
Thank you. And my last question just was around the parking, and I do realise that a few reports ago that there was going to be a redesign of the parking at the airport to allow for more capacity. How has that had an effect?
Yep, so we are working on that still. Given Blair's background in data analytics, we are taking quite a data-driven approach to understand demand versus what our supply is. We're doing work as of this week around that. We would look to start any reconfiguration in the new year. But at this point, though, we haven't reached a full determination on what that looks yet.
Thank you so much for that, and congratulations on the EV charging station.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, thank you, gentlemen. Very interesting report, and appreciate the hard work. My apologies for not getting to the AGM. Just wasn't possible. I've got questions in three areas. The first one is on can I have more detail on the refinancing of debt? How do you see that unfolding? Do you want to talk?
So the purpose of refinancing the debt is to take advantage of an opportunity through the local government funding agency, which previously has not been available to CCOs. And so the idea is, if we were able to reduce our cost of funds, that makes it obviously much better for us. And it will also relieve the council in terms of its obligation to provide term loan funding to us, which it has done, as you may recall, since the assets were acquired by the airport itself. So the idea is effectively, as I said before, in two parts. One is to refinance the existing debt, hopefully at a lower cost of funds, and secondly, to use the lower cost of borrowing in order to fund revenue accretive projects.
Thanks, that's helpful. I notice in here in the report a P&L. Could that be elaborated in future to show how that is tracking? Because the profit and loss or income and expenditure report in here is, in my view, minimalistic, and it doesn't really allow me to understand how the organisation is breathing. The second question I've got is depreciation. I note that there's something like a 2.5 million impact of the depreciation policy on the surplus. And I wondered if that depreciation policy itself is coming under review by the board.
Can I suggest, just for that first question, we are delving a little bit into the operational side then, but I'm sure that if you would like it, you can have a conversation with Peter and he can elaborate on the profit and loss details that you would like. But as it's reported is all that they need to report to council for the statement of intent. But I'll let you carry on, Peter, with the other questions.
More than happy to have a conversation with you in terms of some of the additional detail you want in relation to the P&L. Forgive me, I've forgotten the second question. I'm sorry.
The depreciation policy as it stands is having a massive effect on your surplus,
yep.
And thus it
not
raises
only
the question,
will
you be reviewing the depreciation policy?
Yeah, we already have.
Okay.
In fact, that's been something that we've looked at over the last year in order to try and get more granular in terms of trying to find ways in which we can reduce that hit effectively that's created by depreciation in terms of the way in which we manage our assets and the way in which we depreciate our assets. So not only are we aware of the issue, we've actually looked to do something about it by reducing the depreciation where possible.
Thanks. The final question, if I may, is Ngāti Urukapoko has got an MOU being completed or just completed with you. Can I have some details on the nature of that agreement? I welcome it, by the way.
So we're in the final steps with Ngāti Urukapoko regarding that. We are meeting with them towards the end of next week to really finalise the process, and once the process has been agreed and the MOU is signed, that will be available to councillors.
Thank you. We have a number of people. We've got Councillor Donaldson, followed by Her Worship the Mayor, Councillor Maxwell, Yates, Kaifong, and then Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, gentlemen, and really appreciate the acknowledgement for Tony. Particularly profound, as I too am a big Motown fan, so I didn't know that about him. And look, I think in the highlights there, I see that the only team injury was a strained muscle in the gym. I think you can take that as a badge of honour, that that's your only injury for the year. Councillor Wang answered my question a bit about the sustainability projects going forward and the investigation into what Christchurch have done with the solar investment there. But it's in the back of my head somewhere that some of our commercial airlines have already ordered electric aircraft going forward. So I see that as something that is well worth investigating in the future.
Yeah, so just on that point, Councillor Donaldson, so electric aircraft, whilst there are concepts available, given the battery technology required and the sustainability impact on those batteries, they are still probably a good decade away. Air New Zealand has engaged with a company, I believe, in Sweden regarding that, and so has Sounds Air, which are a smaller local carrier in New Zealand. We'll be committed to working with our partner airlines around that, and also in the general aviation space. You would have seen in recent times there is a electric general aviation aircraft floating around New Zealand at the moment. We are investigating work to see how Rotorua Airport and its facilities can enable that aircraft to potentially visit, use the charging facilities available, and then carry on, because that is, for the cost effectiveness of it, it's about $20 an hour versus $220 an hour to run. So we are working with the aircraft supplier on that to see what facilities are required.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Yes, can I just thank you both for coming. It's quite delightful to see intergenerational renewal going on. And Logan, can I also comment publicly that when the Delta case broke that went through the Rotorua Airport, you let me know exactly what was going on and the steps that you'd undertaken, and I felt very reassured. So that was my first encounter with you in this role, and I was very impressed. Thanks for the acknowledgements too for the board members, and Tony Marks was dearly loved in the tourism industry as well as the aeronautical industry, and a huge loss, and actually was working on the future of tourism, giving very valuable advice in there as well. Just congratulations on the case with Airways. That is major for us to have kept our air traffic control capability and safety for the travelling public here in Rotorua. That was a major, and you took a risk undertaking an appeal of that decision, and well done. Also, Wise Owl, that was a delightful encounter with those that came and enjoyed that training here. And could I also, I can't resist here, but to say we've got an ideal opportunity now when you're looking at route planning, when we come out of this Delta, to look at a direct Queenstown-Rotorua flight, and you might find there's bipartisan support. I know they don't get involved, but that's an ideal opportunity for us to maximise for growth in the regions at this stage. My only question is around training. We were looking at bringing international training opportunities here. I remember Vietnam and others that were thinking of it? Is that just died a death with the international market at the moment?
Yeah, so pre the traffic light and the recent announcements in the borders, the government approved 400 pilot trainees to enter New Zealand to work. I believe 80% of those have gone to Wanganui, which will have a direct impact on Rotorua, as between the distance between Wanganui and Rotorua Airport is sufficient for cross-country training, and we regularly see them on a weekly basis. So whilst it won't have a demonstrable impact as a home base for us at this time, we will see a positive flow-on effect from that. And we are currently investigating options regarding co-partnering with other flight training providers in New Zealand. Unfortunately, most of them are in Auckland at the moment, though.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, gentlemen. My question or my comments in that, some of it has already been touched on by Her Worship the Mayor, but I wanted to comment on the Property Council Awards, the Supreme Award. I believe we achieved it by having the air traffic control services retained in Rotorua, so I'm very pleased with that outcome. And so I won't ask the question on that part, but the question I have then might be to you, Logan. How did Portugal beat Hamilton for that air control services? They were really good for our country, that training services up there.
Yeah, completely agree, Councillor Maxwell. So L3 is a multinational conglomerate enterprise. They make everything from X-ray machines in airports to flight training schools. I believe the transition between New Zealand and Portugal had ICAO regulations, which are the International Civil Aviation Organisation, regarding not necessarily poorer training options, but accelerated training options. Flight training is something you can't just learn overnight, but countries unlike New Zealand that have lesser and relaxed regulations are more favourable for that, potentially having an impact on air traffic safety. So yeah, whilst massively unfortunate, I think it was an ICAO-related decision versus a New Zealand or a Hamilton decision.
Thank you.
Councillor Yates.
Kia ora, and through you, Madam Chair. Nei rā te mihi kia kōrua, Logan, kōrua ko Peter. Apologies also for me, I wasn't able to make the AGM the other week, but here we are today. So a couple of things I just wanted to follow up with. One was around whether or not the reo had been corrected, because there were some reo errors in some of the labelling. So whether that'd be my first question, and then I've got one more question after that.
Yes, so we did work with a local consultant to have that rectified.
Excellent, ka pai. Second one, which I do raise every now and then, is around, particularly around the development of the terminal itself and looking at opportunities for local businesses. I'll use Ahu as an example, to perhaps have a containerised or pop-up shop experience where we're actually celebrating. I know that that's an area that you do want to celebrate local businesses, or the greatness of Rotorua, whether or not that's been considered an option or an opportunity to showcase local businesses here in Rotorua.
Yes, so through Blair's strategic project works, a terminal retail project was advanced through feasibility and is now moving to business case stage for those exact opportunities. We are, from a sequencing perspective, in a point of stasis with the IPL and Air New Zealand landing charges. Following confirmation of that, as Peter mentioned, as we move to our funding requirements, we'll then be able to advance those business cases into ID and DD. So I would like to say we'll be looking at that in the new year sometime, but as advanced through feasibility, and it does show it will work.
Okay, thank you. And finally, just congratulations on the merit. Even becoming a finalist is huge, so congratulations. Kia ora.
Thank you. We'll go Councillor Kumar and then finish with Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through the Chair, good morning, Peter. Good morning, Logan. Thank you for a very good report for the year. And it's good to see that it's enlightening for the year coming forward. Merry Christmas to you and your team as well. Just got a couple of questions. One probably very superficial, and it's always been a bugbear. I think the common people want to know, when are we going to start flying to Queenstown? because while it has been always asked around the table, sometimes the common person doesn't know. And my second question is, with us going into the traffic light system as of tomorrow and we are in the red, are we all vaccine passed ready, or is the airport ready to deal with that next phase?
Councillor Kumar, I'll raise the vaccine rules first. So as Rotorua has been entered into the red zone, there are very minimal changes of how we operate as an airport environment. It's not vaccine mandatory to enter the building. It is vaccine mandatory from the 14th of December to fly on the Air New Zealand service, or you have to provide proof of a negative test within 3 days. We are working with Air New Zealand as to what that looks like, and I have great reassurance from them that there is going to be a significant amount of collateral released over the next day or two regarding that, because generally the travelling public or the demographics that we see through the Christmas time period are not frequent flyers. They are people that will travel once a year for holiday events, family reunions, etc., and they might be called out on that. So Air New Zealand are going to be making some recommendations around how they mitigate those, because unfortunately, as it is an issued mandate from them, it is either a vaccination pass or a negative 3-day test, or they don't fly. So we are working with them, but as it is an airline responsibility, they are taking the lead on that. As we move through to orange, hopefully sooner rather than later, there are changes into the building, but those are yet to be really determined by the Ministry of Transport, who set our sector guidance on that.
Councillor, just in relation to Queenstown, and I note Her Worship the Mayor's comment on this, and I have to say that Her Worship is nothing if not consistent on the issue of Queenstown. The issue of routes are obviously an airline decision, got nothing to do with us. What our information has been in the past is that we need to build a Christchurch link to justify the case for Air New Zealand to then do a direct link from Rotorua to Queenstown. But my recollection pre-COVID was that the Auckland Airport, who, as you know, has a significant stake in Queenstown, was starting to get interested in the possibility of encouraging a link from Rotorua to Queenstown. And then the final point I'd make is that one of the great things of having Nicole Brewer back is that the job she did at Air New Zealand when she worked there for 8 years was in route planning. And that means that she understands the kind of criteria that are applied, the issues that need to be thought through, which I think makes her a wonderful returning gift for us in terms of route development concentration for the future.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Kai Fong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question, but I'd just like to congratulate you both on the presentation this morning. In particular, Logan, well done on a great presentation and being able to answer all the questions so fully today. I'd like to also acknowledge Peter and the board and the senior leadership team. Thank you for acknowledging the work that Mark Gibb and Tony Marks have done over the last few years. It's been a particularly challenging time this year, operating both with COVID, having to negotiate airways, and so you've also had the strategic challenge that the council has put to you into realigning the airport or repositioning it so that it has additional income streams. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next year with some of that work coming to fruition now that the feasibility has been done. But thank you, Peter. It's a testament to your leadership with the strategic direction that the airport is now taking. Congratulations, Logan, for your achievements to date, and I look forward to working with you both next year. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and can I just say congratulations on your recent wedding anniversary.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the very first one. It's going pretty good so far. Well, I'd now like to draw our attention to our operational report. We've changed it a little bit in that as it is the last meeting for the year, we've asked our Deputy Chief Executives to provide an overview on the year in reflection for 2021. As we know, this year has come with some significant challenges, but there have also been some incredible work from our hard-working team as well. So we'll go first to our Deputy Chief Executive of District Leadership and Democracy Group, Una Hopkins, and I believe you have a presentation for us today too.
I do. Kia ora, good morning everybody. I just want to follow on from what our Chair has said there, in that just reminding ourselves that this particular round of meetings wasn't originally in our schedule for the year. And as we've seen with the amount of activity that has been happening in our organisation and across the district, it became evident quite a few months back that there really was a need to come together one last time. And so in doing that, we thought it was a really good opportunity to deliver the year in reflection in a slightly different way to the usual format for the O&M committee. So we hope that in putting together a series of presentations that reflect upon the year and reflect upon our people in our organisation and the activity that they are delivering is something that you can appreciate and see as a really good summary of the year that we've just been through. So that leads into the first of our DCE presentations today, with my area, District Leadership and Democracy, being the first cab off the rank. And you'll see the way that we've structured these today is that we're going to start off with the DCE areas and those groups that support our organisation, that are effectively the cogs for all the areas that deliver services and projects. So we'll go through those support areas first, and then we'll lead into our DCEs that are at the forefront of delivering projects, programs and services.
And on that note, Una, I'll just ask for a mover and a seconder that the report Rotorua Lakes Council Year in Reflection 2021 be received. Moved Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Kaifong. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried, thank you. Back to you, thank you.
Thank you. So looking at the challenges that we've had throughout the year, and it just cannot go past the uncertainty of the ever-changing COVID-19 landscape. And along with that is that ensuring our services must continue in these challenging times. Some businesses and services have shut doors. The council doesn't do that. We continue to provide services, support yourselves in making decisions, and we have to find different ways in which to do that. And so flexibility and innovation has been something that's been at the forefront of how we can navigate our way through these challenging times. In addition to that, we've had to really think hard about the ways that we can keep engaging with our stakeholders. How do we inform people of what is going on in a very noisy environment that we're living in at the moment? Our COVID response within the District Leadership and Democracy Group has centred around keeping our staff, the community and you, our elected members, informed. And it's been a busy year for engagement. One of our key pieces of information to our community is our website. And our website has been full of information around all of our varying degrees of alert level information. It's information there at your fingertips. Equally important has been the need to keep our staff informed and connected throughout these times of yes, be in the office, no, don't be in the office, work from home, deliver services, keep going. So our ongoing correspondence in the form of messages from our CE have kept our staff well informed and connected with the organisation and the challenges that the organisation are dealing with. There's also the ongoing heads up, and sometimes these are coming out to you daily, sometimes even more. And these are the opportunities to alert you to what is at the forefront of pieces of work and information that our team is dealing with. So what are the good news stories in amongst all of this? We have had some really awesome mahi that we have supported throughout the year. And in the last 2 years, we've seen a real increase in the number of people engaging with Council. And you can see that very strongly and evidenced in taking a look at something like our social media platform. Conversations like the unveiling of the taonga at Pūtaki Otawa. And you can see here just the number of interactions and reactions people are having with our different kaupapa. The opening of Pūtaki Otawa. And even things around how people have been extremely interested in the geothermal activity at Kurau Park. Look at all of the views and connections that people are having with us around these really strong kaupapa and messages. The Mayor's post-hui videos, people are watching these, and if they're not watching the live streaming and seeing what happens within this room, they're going and having a look online and seeing the key messages that come out of your conversations here in this room. And we can't go past reflecting on the really awesome photo competition that was undertaken for the lakefront. Over 100 photo entries were received for this competition, photos capturing the beautiful view and vista out to Makoia Island across the lake from the wonderful new boardwalk. So social media is not the only platform that we inform and engage with our community. There is the ongoing publication of the Tato Tato magazine. This has been somewhat challenging to deliver during this year, but we have delivered and published 3 issues of this. This magazine goes to every household in our district, and it isn't just council news, it's community news. It's about people in your district and the great things that they are interacting on, working on and delivering for the community. We have also revamped and have a new look website. At this stage, it has been a pick-up of existing website and producing that into a new platform. And in that, there's been 300 news items delivered across the year. Not all those news items have been great news items, but it shows the level of activity and kaupapa that this council is actively involved in. The last 2 years have shown a real increase in the number of people engaging with our council, in particularly on our online platform. Our Let's Talk Korero Mai platform visits are increasing all the time. Our engagement with our community is up. We have had some 20,000 visits to the site in the last year, and 13,000 individuals have made a connection with the conversations on that platform. And the conversations that people are engaging with and the projects that they're looking into are varied in themselves. Things through from a long-term plan through to engaging with and being interested in speed limits, through to looking at and loving our community playgrounds. Over the course of the year, District Leadership and Democracy have supported a range of projects across Council. The focus has been on internal and external communications support, media relations, community and stakeholder engagement, and governance support for this Council to make informed decisions for our community. We've been involved in kaupapa like the East Side Wellness Plan and working alongside Tato Tato Pounamu. We support projects like the ongoing progress of capital projects like the Aquatic Centre and the fantastic displays down at the lakefront, including the playground that you can see here. So where do we as a team go looking forward into next year? Our team need to continue to rise to the challenge to meet and support our community's appetite for engagement. People are feeling tired right now, and we need to find new ways of being able to inform, advise, engage, support, and bring the community along with us in the types of on the pieces of work that we're doing. We will also be doing and progressing the local bill. And of course, that will lead into the development of the pre-election report and ultimately looking towards elections for 2022. And we will continue to support and share the awesome kaupapa delivered by all of Council services and projects. And I just want to take the opportunity really quickly to thank all of my team within District Leadership and Democracy. They've worked diligently in extremely hard times and continue with passion to deliver and support all of the awesome projects and kaupapa that is going on. And I truly hope that they have a wonderful Christmas and some downtime and share in some really valuable family moments. I'm happy to take any questions on the areas that I've just covered off.
Well, thank you. And I think we're all quite amazed at re-looking at everything that you and your team have been doing in the past year. And I mean, that engagement, the tens of thousands of people that are engaging with our discussion documents, topics, community projects, not only online, but also connecting in through the Tato Tato magazine. It's just so wonderful to see. Thank you, Una. Your Worship, the Mayor.
If I could just add to the Chair's comments, I think we've seen for the first time, actually, the breadth and the depth of your responsibilities with your team in that snapshot, because it has many threads. And I congratulate you. I'm particularly pleased to see the pick-up on our communications with our community and the beginning of much more interaction, both online and people viewing the website. Because that is how we tell our story. It's not only through our own social media channels, and I congratulate you, the pickup is great and it's becoming relevant and interesting to the community. But what a year. I'm also aware, Mrs Hopkins, of the staff comings and goings in your team and some very sensitive issues that you've had to navigate through. So thank you, and I hope you take your own advice and have a good break with your family, just to regenerate and rejuvenate for what's going to be a challenging year, because we're heading into a year of politics. So it is going to be challenging, and we have to face that with reality. So well done on your leadership.
Thank you. Councillor Yates, followed by Councillor Kaifong.
Ngā mihi, through you, Madam Chair. Kia koe una, o tira koto tima, koto ohu. Nei rā te mihi kia koutou. I've especially found it, with this being my second year in my first term, hugely beneficial knowing that there was a team that I could approach, ask questions from and be advised. We've had two during... Well, this year in particular, we've had two areas, the long-term plan as well as with the representation review, that we've been really guided by your team in particular really, really well. So nei rā te mihi kia koe. I just did want to pick up on the progress of the local bill and whether or not you could give us a little bit of an update on that, because obviously I'd like to see that moving along really quickly.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. The local bill work is progressing at speed, and we are preparing to bring back to you a proposal on the 16th of December with the intent there looking for your support to lodge that. The time frame is a tight one, so everybody is working at speed to bring that back to you on the 16th.
Thank you. Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Una, for the presentation. This is just really a communications issue. We had some discussion with the community around community safety and getting more communication out to the public that we were going to have more people out on the ground and up and down Fenton Street. And there was a question of who do people ring? So how do we get that message out there that they should be ringing the police rather than council if they see sort of things happening?
Just looking around to see whether any of the team here, I believe that is going to be covered, that whole sort of community safety aspect later on, but we'll also ensure that we're getting messages out with the right, if there's an issue, who to ring, who to go to first. We'll ensure that.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll get Kurt to give us a good update on that when they do their presentation. Thank you.
And just one further question was just for the public in general, just getting that message out there to use the council email customer service, when they're, rather than reporting things like unmanned booms and reserves and things like that, it would be more useful if it was directly communicated to council so they could direct it to the right department rather than to councillors who may then have to kind of try and find the right person.
You're right there. Thank you. Yes, that needs to be an ongoing message that ring the customer centre, and from there your requests can be directed to the most appropriate place within council to deal with, and we'll ensure that that message is a continual piece of communication that goes out.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, followed by Councillor Rokawate.
Thank you, Una. I just want to comment about how right at the beginning, the first slide, you touched on COVID, but you spoke about it, how positively it was worked on here from you and your team. So I say congratulations as well. And I'm pleased that we're having this chance to reflect back on the things that we achieved, because you're so right, there's been a lot of noise around. And it's just good to reflect back, especially knowing that normally at the end of every year, the Chamber of Commerce, they have their BA5 sessions in the Galleria, and a lot of the community come along and they do enjoy those sessions that are being held. So I'm pleased you've taken the initiative. And again, congratulations to you and your team. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Rokawate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Una. I just want to say, Una, that I'm not surprised that you've had so many, what would you call it, so many of our community engaging now and through the different forms of communication and the media that you've actually developed. Because our community is so diverse, and when I remember going back a number of years now, very rarely did that diversification and that diverse community actually did we ever hear their voice, and there was certainly a lack of engagement. So through your use of the various media and the Facebook and etc., actually our community can get the facts. It's not a guesswork. It's actually, these are the facts. This is what we're doing, and so you're getting the information out to them. But I just want to say you have given the voices that were never heard before. You've actually given them voice. So I thank you for that. And I do want to also thank you, Jeff, for the appointment of Una as a Deputy Chief Executive. Everybody knows that I support women's ambition to stand alongside as equals of anybody else in senior leadership teams. And you got there on merit, as indeed you should, and I'm so delighted to see you there in the leadership team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Una. It's a wonderful note to wrap that up. Yeah, thank you. And thank you also to Una's wider team. It's much appreciated that through the challenges of this year, that our council meetings and committee meetings and many, many workshops have been able to operate smoothly. So thank you very much. Well, on that note, I think we'll take our morning tea break now. So we'll break for 15 minutes. Thank you and sorry to the staff who have arrived, but we'll take a 15-minute break now, which means we'll return at 11:20, please. Executive of Organisational Enablement Group, who will overview his presentation for the year.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning once again. The Organisational Enablement Group, just a reminder, is historically the clustering of all the corporate services, and we're here to help enable our organisation deliver against its outcomes. First one is just touching on the Project Management Office and just giving a bit of an example. It's slowly coming up with regards to some of the work that it does. And so the Project Management Office provides resource across a lot of the organisation to help it deliver against its program of works. But here's a good example with regards to how it's supporting JP and his team and the housing initiative. So the little image on the right with the orange and blue boxes and it's very hard to read, and it's done that on purpose because you don't need to read the detail of it, shows you with regards to the governance structures, the people that are involved, the programs of work that are established. And so to put that into context, 5 programs of work, 22 work streams, 75 projects that are planned, 44 initiated, and a whole wealth of staff to deliver against those programs. Working with partners from landowners, MHUD, Kāinga Ora, even MSD on some streams of work, and with an estimated cost of about $300 million of capital works planned to help drive towards our housing initiatives. Now, I won't go into detail of what that looks like because I know JP has a great presentation at the end that shows how we're delivering against that, but just an example of the sort of work that the Project Management Office does to help support our organisation. From a finance and business performance team, apologise for the white lettering, a little hard to read. The big one at the moment is the adoption of the annual report. So normally we would have completed that back in October, but audit, like a lot of other entities within New Zealand, are really struggling with resources, and we are working towards getting a verbal clearance later this week and an adoption of our annual report at the 15th or 16th December meeting. That's obviously about 2 months later than normal, and the government has changed legislation to allow for that. There are a number of our CCOs that will not be audited in that window and are scheduled to be audited in March. I probably struggle to understand how audit will achieve that with the limited resources, so some of our CCOs may therefore skip 1 year and be picked up in the following year, but audit are endeavouring to complete all those. It's not unique to Rotorua. This is an issue throughout New Zealand. Some of the other work streams completed, the 2020 general revaluation, and obviously the flow on into the rating system, completion and adoption of the long-term plan back in June. There was that significant piece of work with regards to the Holiday Act remediation project with regards to the compliance to the ever-changing legislation on that front. And then a consistent focus on procurement and contract administration, as well as insurance admin and all the duties that they do. The other new one that did come up was the local government rating for Whenua Māori Amendment Act, and it was the interpretation of that, the review against our existing rating policy, and then the amendment of that. And I remind you, I think we had a discussion about this a couple of months ago with regards to there were changes to the tune of about $100,000 to about 20 or 30 entities with regards to complying to that act. So there wasn't a lot of impact to the way that we were rating already. From a building services point of view, they've been incredibly busy, but the main focus has been on the refurbishment of the pensioner flats and the bring back in-house of getting qualified builders on board and changing the way that we procured services. And it's looking like that we're saving at about $300,000 per annum on operational costs there. Now you'd say, Thomas, based on your presentation before, is that going to help offset before? Well, no, those $300,000 of savings are being put straight back into more spend and making sure that all our assets are being well looked after. So it is being reinvested back into our facilities and our buildings. I think to date we've finished 11 pensioner flats out of about, I think, 200, and we've, partway through a 6-year program to refresh some of that older stock. With regards to our information and solutions customer services team, so those two teams were amalgamated recently, and to, I guess, refocus, or not refocus, but focus both of them on the customer experience. Now, my apologies, I do have to refer to my notes because some of this information isn't in my job description, so I have to refer to some notes, and it's quite detailed. Probably I think the question came before of what keeps me up, or what was my focus or worried about the most. It was probably around the digital enablement of our organisation and the way that we interact and do business with our community. And there really has been a big drive and focus on that recently, and that will continue going forward. So from a cybersecurity perspective, our systems processed 1.7 million emails. My apologies, a couple of phishing ones snuck through last night pretending to be the mayor, but in the main, most get picked up and most get dealt with. About 2,300 awareness videos, so that's the internal training that we do with our staff on how to deal with these things. And we had a little over 400 malicious attachments and viruses try to make their way into our system and get blocked. The whole system itself has been up 99% of the time. Obviously, it gets brought down for maintenance and refreshing, and the team, the IT infrastructure team, has spent the last year doing a significant renewal of the underlying IT. So most of our servers and hardware have been replaced. And I think there's a little image there of 100% horsepower increase, but there's been a significant increase in power and resources, and in particular in light of more working from home and remoting in to enable that. I think the interesting fact was 60% of the traffic through our network is actually CCTV with regards to data and that. So that obviously takes up quite a bit of time. And then from the customer services point of view, this is the call centre and the customer services team, just under 60,000 calls per annum, 25,000 RFSs for services. So councillors, I think you mentioned before, those people that are contacting you, please contact our call centre and they'll deal with those appropriately. About 25,000 rates inquiries, sorry, the number there is a little bit wrong, and they deal with about 52,000 emails. Now, part of that digital enablement is actually moving away from that and being in a position whereby a lot of the businesses and interaction that our community can do with us is online. And so we are therefore working towards our One Council implementation, which I'll talk to about shortly. We've just completed a data strategy, so that's a piece of work understanding all our data sets within our organisation, how they interact, how they're managed, how can they be used, and so putting a framework on top of that, because data is probably one of our most valuable assets, and part of that strategy is also identifying how our community can access that and use it for their purposes as well. We've had a digital first campaign with regards to encouraging people to not come to the customer service centre to do things that they can do online. And so what we have seen is a nice little reduction in the number of people that are visiting us. COVID restrictions obviously means that we've had to accelerate those elements as well. And then just to put it in a bit of perspective about the work volume that our organisation does do is it created 140,000 new records that have to be compliant to the Archives Acts and those sorts of things. We've disposed of 3,000 records that are no longer required, and that's all in line with policies. We've released 4,200 property files based on requests, and we've also quality assured another 3,000 of our existing files, and we've done significant training on the Privacy Act, and in particular the changes that came through recently for 2020. One of the main initiatives was a review of our print room when we had the retirement of a long-standing staff member, and reviewed how we did things and did so forth. And so what we have seen is a change in behaviour across our organisation of how and when we use our internal services, and we're actually seeing an uplift in the use of our internal capability, which has helped alleviate some of the cost pressures as well. One of the big projects that we talk about is our One Council. So that's the replacement of our core ERP system, which is scheduled to go live in the new year, just working through understanding COVID impacts and the timing of that. Really is an automation of a lot of our internal processes, but also creating portals with regards to our community's ability to do business online with us, send files, receive, do RFSs, keep track of where things are at, and really leverage that digital communication. We're currently in collaboration with the Waikato LAS, which is the Waikato Councils, on a digital enablement initiative, which is actually focusing on recycling and refuse. We all seem to have a bit of a common problem and high volumes of calls to our call centres. And so as we work towards trying to have more interactions online, like we do maybe with our banks through an app and those sorts of things, there seems to be a common theme around refuse and recycling and sustainability. For those councillors that might ask me, is sustainability in there? The Waikato Regional Council is also joining in around how we can reduce the number of volume of calls and transactions and automate that experience for us. And the Customer Service Centre will go through a refresh of its technology as well with regards to the call centre. We've been driving more mobility into our teams and our organisations. By far, this time around 100 days ago when we went back into lockdown was a lot easier probably this time than the previous time with regards to people working from home and all the steps that we've put into place. So while there was interruptions, the organisation did adjust and was able to do the things that it needed to do. And so just to put into perspective, over the last 12 months, there's been just under 700,000 minutes of video calls. So I think a lot of organisations are finding that actually you don't need to travel, you don't need to meet in person if you can't, and video conferencing is by far becoming very popular. About 50% of our staff are working remotely at the moment, and are finding it quite easy to work remotely with regards to the technology aspects. We are impacted by hardware delays, so getting a new laptop or some items now have significantly long lead times, and in our IT space, this is probably one of the, in my area anyway, one of the areas that is most under pressure with regards to staff retention, because as the world moves to a more digital space and the pressures come on, those staff become more and more attractive for other organisations. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Thomas. Is that just under 700,000 minutes of video calls just the internal staff calls that have happened for them to do business as usual?
Yep.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay. Yeah. Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Thomas. And it's almost been a breath of fresh air after this morning's presentation to actually see the year that has been for our staff and obviously yourself. But just my question is around, for those of our staff that are having to work remotely at home, they're able to use the council resources to be able to do that?
Yes, in most cases. Some people may choose to have additional items, like myself personally. I have my own setup that I can use, but we are in the process of transitioning our underlying technology platform, which is based on virtual remote logins, to more mobile devices like laptops, and with the security measures that we put in place, all staff are quite happily, easily able to do their work from those devices.
Ms Rothwell, followed by Her Worship the Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned Waikato LAS. Could you explain a little bit about how that works for me?
We belong to two shared services entities, so where all local authorities bundle together. So the Bay of Plenty has a cluster which we belong to, and we also participate into the Waikato one. The Waikato one, we've been talking to them around digital enablement and customer experience, and in particular Hamilton City Council is really keen to accelerate and progress. And so as a coalition of the willing, we've kind of teamed up with them and Tauranga City Council, as well as Waipa and Waikato District Council and the Waikato Regional Council to pick a project that the team have identified that we can collectively work together to implement a step change improvement in the way that we engage with our community in a digital platform. So it's very early on in the phases at the moment, and hopefully will get worked through and delivered in the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Her Worship the Mayor, followed by Councillor Donaldson and Councillor Rokawate.
It's quite overwhelming, really, Thomas, when you see that. But the impact of 50% of business being done by remote access, does that have an impact long-term on the physical use of the buildings? Are we going to move more and more to remote working?
I think it will naturally happen, Your Worship. I think I was reading something on the Great Resignation and the employment challenges that we have. And I think every consultant in that space is saying that as you try and attract new staff, if you're not offering flexibility, you're likely going to struggle to recruit new talent. So I think that will naturally happen.
The question is about the customer centre, which is sort of the community-facing arm of our organisation. Do you envisage any joining up with others about sort of call centre responses, customer centre? Is it a link with regional council or the DHB, or you can just see that capability being a channel?
It's been discussed for quite a while. I think from an after hours perspective, there's always been the Palmerston North City Council initiative where they ran the majority of call centres for councils after hours. We obviously use Watchdog, a local organisation, to support us. I think rather than the opportunity being a shared service for our customer service centre, it's the transition of our customer service experience to a more digital interaction. And, I only need to look at the last time I stepped into a bank. I can't even remember it. I can pretty much do everything online through my app and do all the things, and it's pretty rare that I need to come into the branch or even call a branch. And I'd like to think that's where we're moving towards. And I think that's where the opportunity is. And the work that we're doing through Waikato LAS is looking at where those opportunities across our councils, where those synergies are, so we're not all trying to do the same thing, and we can collectively come up with the solution together.
Good luck with the go live date for one council.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with Her Worship, Thomas. It's pretty gobsmacking, some of the numbers there. And so I can see why cyber security probably keeps you awake at night when I see the impact it had on the Waikato DHB when they were hacked. And so the more we're, I guess, invested in and committed to an online way of working, the higher that risk becomes as something that we need to. And I think back to 2015 when I came back from a forum in Brisbane and said to the Mayor, we need a digital strategy, and that's probably long since been discarded, and times have moved on. So just in relation to the One Council ERP coming in the new year, will us Motown era dinosaurs need any training in how that works as elected members?
Fortunately, you won't have to use it, but part of the rollout of that technology is a rather comprehensive training program and cycle. And there's a team dedicated to doing that to ensure the utmost chance of success on Go Live.
Thank you. Councillor Rotorua.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, mine's really been answered by the Mayor's question to Thomas, and it was just really around if the 50% are working at home and have been doing so for some time, they're not in their cars, coming into work, sitting at the computer, that they're doing it right now at home. So I think that probably is the way of the future, and just coming in once a week for a team meeting and then just carrying on. I see a recent survey. It was an insurance company, and I think it was 80% of those who are currently working at home just said that they'd like to continue to do that. So it does bear thinking about in the future.
Cool. I did have a quick question. Obviously, the introduction of our project management office was crucial for us to deliver the significant projects that we've got involved. I'm just wondering, is the establishment of the project management office looking to be a long-term solution as well as we continue to face additional challenges such as housing and the impacts of COVID?
I think the PMO will continue to evolve to support the organisation and its needs. So it's not going anywhere, but it is currently probably going through a little bit of a rebirth, if I was to call it that, with regards to engaging the organisation in a different way, and how it, in a way, therefore, of how the organisation resources projects going forward with regards to attracting that talent. Yep.
Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Thomas, once again. Thomas, I'm particularly happy that there is I'm particularly happy to see that we might be entering the digital space where that example that you used regarding the bank. However, I think if we reflect back into what our community is at the moment, and while we might be going there in the future, currently we have a lot of people that are not digital savvy, or they want to see a teller, or they want to see customer service. And I think that's just the demographics of the population at the best. Maybe in the future it might change, but currently I think we need to really tread carefully if we are to take customer service away from them.
Look, and that's that ever present tension that is there. I think what we're saying though is that our preferences are moving towards the other avenue with regards to digital enablement. We're not saying that we're going to remove access for those that don't have that, and we will actively work with individuals that have technology challenges, just like I think at the moment people go into the library to get help with regards to their COVID vaccine passports, and we're more than willing to help with that transition as well. But I think the priority has to be digital versus in person, just like nearly every other organisation in New Zealand has shifted down that paradigm as well.
Oh, thank you very much, Thomas. I think you've explained well just how well you were doing in terms of thinking globally to deliver locally. And when I look at the 25,000 requests for service that we've received in the past year, and knowing that the digital enablement projects to date have helped us and will continue to help us to evolve and to basically to be more efficient for our community when we need to serve them. So thank you for all of the work to date. Thank you to your team as well, and we look forward to seeing how we continue to progress and innovate in future. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Gina Rangi, our Deputy Chief Executive for Te Aroha Partnership Group, to overview her presentation. Kia ora, Gina.
Tēnā tātou. Kia ora, everyone. I was just starting off with what the year's been like for our team. As with many others in the community, a number of events were postponed or cancelled. For my team, that means meetings and hui with various Te Aroha partners. It meant the postponement of and then eventual cancellation of events like Aronui Festival and Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. Which is really disappointing, but also just the nature of the year that we've had. Where possible, we moved online, so there were a number of protocol meetings, hui and so forth that moved online, as well as our staff training. So we continued to hold our weekly Te Reo Māori classes online, and a number of lectures and seminars were held online as well. As noted up there, alert levels had a major impact on Te Aroha engagement. It didn't just mean that it was more practically difficult, but you could see the fatigue within our community. Many families and community groups have been under considerable stress this year, and it just makes it harder to get on the agenda with all of the things that we need to invite their comments on. And that's something that Una talked about as well. And of course, the other big impact of COVID has been the social and economic impact on our community, especially the housing crisis, and that's particularly impacted on low-income families where Māori are disproportionately represented. But there were some good news stories. Strong partnerships are key to delivering our major projects, and we've seen a number of milestones hit this year as we work towards completion of projects that are outlined in some of our delivery teams' portfolios. So you'll hear Stavros and JP talk about some of the projects that they're working on, and I really want to highlight some of the partnerships that underpin delivery on those projects. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in this presentation. For example, we do a lot of work around what's termed cultural foundation projects. It's really important to understand that these are not just about putting an attractive Māori pattern or a Māori name on a project. This is about engaging with our community from the very beginning, from project initiation, design, construction, all the way through to opening. So it's a big investment in long-term relationships, and I'll highlight some of the things, the examples of how we do what we do. Another amazing outcome, and Stavros will talk to this in his presentation in more detail, we were granted a jointly held resource consent for the water take at Te Puna Pekehaua. This is, to my knowledge, a national first. I'm not aware of any other councils that have achieved a joint resource consent held with mana whenua in respect of an infrastructure project in particular. Why is this important? Many of you will recall the long-standing, almost 40 years, I'll use the word grievance, claim of Ngāti Rangiwiwihi in respect of the wrongful taking of their spring. Now, at the time, the Rotorua Borough Council said, we don't need to own the spring, we just want to access it to use it. But the Crown took the land under Public Works Act taking anyway. And that's been a long-standing intergenerational claim from Ngāti Rangiwiwihi. There are kaumātua today who can recall their grandparents weeping when the land was taken. Their grandfathers just broken-hearted about that. And about 7 years ago, I think, this council returned the ownership of the land, but more than that, committed to a relationship with Ngāti Rangiwiwihi and the trustees of the water spring. Relationships like that don't come easily. They take leadership from not only our elected members, but also from staff to build effective working relationships and a commitment to working through disagreements and different views, because we recognise that we need each other. We need each other to succeed. And so it's one thing to say, yes, we've got this resource consent, but I don't think that truly captures the hours, the weeks, the years of work from both Ngāti Rangi Wiwihi and from Council to build a relationship that enables this to happen. Stavros will talk about it in more detail, but I just really wanted to commend the work that he and his team have done on this. Māori landowners looking to develop their land for housing, and again, this is something that JP will talk about in more detail, but we've seen an increasing number of Māori landowners approaching Council and working through the process of either plan changes, seeking ideas on how they could best maximise the use of their land. Council, and JP in particular, has brokered a number of relationships between government agencies and potential developers in an effort to help Māori landowners to develop their land for housing. So, I talked a little bit about cultural foundations, and why are these important? These are projects that express our collective sense of people, of place and identity. They're really important in a community because building a great, thriving community is not just about the things we see and can touch, things like footpaths and taps. Building a thriving community is about the bonds and the identity that we have, that we are proud of our district. And cultural design projects are really part of that, of giving people a sense that the projects we are doing are not just about tourism. They're not just about visitors, they're about our community, our families, and so how we design these projects is really important to build a sense of collective ownership of the projects that we're delivering. So the Whakarewarewa Forest, it's a partnership between Council, CNI Iwi Holdings who own the land, Tūhaurangi and Ngāti Whakaue who are mana whenua for that land, and of course I shouldn't forget the forestry operator Kaingaroa Timberlands. So everybody remembers this wonderful opening of Te Pūtake o Tawa, but there have been milestones along the way that have also built that sense of trust and relationship with mana whenua. This photo here is a photo from the 20th of February of this year. It's the opening of the new Te Ko Tukutuku Trail. Why did we invest in that? So that was $200,000 to realign and extend a trail. At one level, for visitors, it's great. It's a beautiful, flowing ride, great for families, and there's been a lot of excitement from the mountain biking community about this particular trail. But from a mana whenua perspective, you will recall that there was criticism and complaints about the public trespassing on Lake Rotokakahi a few years ago. And one of the concerns was that because the mountain bike trails dropped down towards the lake, that potentially people were trespassing onto that privately owned lake, which was creating a lot of concern around water quality issues and the fact that that lake is tapu. So the investment not only created a great trail, but it lifted away the trail from the lake, so you can't access it anymore from the trails. It's about, it's things like this, which are an investment in building trust, in putting right the wrongs, and of showing that we're here not just from an extractive relationship, but that we're trying to give back as well. So that was in February, and then of course there was the amazing opening of Te Pūtake o Tawa in, I think, October of this year. That project involved 5 different artists, the Tūhaurangi Tribal Authority, project managers from Thomas's team, my own team, the Sports, Recreation and Environment team, and also what was the strategy team, which JP was leading when the project was initiated. It's a multi-year project. It's not the kind of thing that happens in 6 months' time. And it was a real testament to a way of working across council and across community. A lakefront, this is another example of a multi-year project involving multiple teams within council. So we would not be able to do that lakefront project without the support of Ngāti Whakaue, because of course the land is gifted reserve, and the support of the Rotorua Lakes Trust, who own the lake bed. What you see here is a photo of Auntie Norma Sturley and Bryce Murray and Kingy Biddle. It was a site visit very early on in the project, and you had external landscape designers, you had project management office, my team, sports and recreation again. We walked the length of the lakefront, and Bryce and Auntie Norma shared with us the names, the particular wāhi tupuna or ancestral sites, gardens, the types of things that grew in particular places all along there. Why did we do that? So that the design of the boardwalk, the playground, all of the things that contribute to that, the terracing, respected what was there originally and reflected our collective sense of identity and self. This is not about just having beautiful painted designs at the end. It's about making sure that the entire project reflects a sense of Ngāti Whakaiwi, of Te Arawa and of Rotorua. And of course, this is a photo from the opening on the 14th of July. And yes, we will have the opening of the playground later this month, which is incredibly exciting to my 6-year-old. Which you can see it behind the fence and is just cannot wait. You can see a huge contingent of people. And again, these projects are not just about the opening day. They are about commitments to relationships over days, weeks, months and years in order for people to turn out and support on the day. Okay, training and capability, this is another big area for my team. So there are formal programs that we have to lift our ability to work effectively with Te Arawa. This year, COVID really affected what we did. We delivered 3 out of 5 planned noho marae. Normally we always deliver them. This year there were only 3. They were attended by 57 staff members. We hold staff waiata sessions every week, and that's why when we have pōhiri and things like that, our staff know how to do them properly. They have a variety of appropriate waiata that they can draw on. And that is really rare in the public sector. Usually you have your one song. And I'm really proud that this organisation has a range of songs and we're never caught short. There's also a monthly community session. I'll show you a photo of that shortly. The waiata sessions were attended by 415 different people this year. We had 107 staff attending Te Reo Māori classes. And we also held specialist sessions on changes to the rating legislation, which Thomas's team have been leading, and the Rotorua Lakes Environmental Plan. So this was a session we held here in the chamber, led by Rotorua Lakes Trust staff, environmental staff for our planning team and infrastructure team. They went through the Rotorua Environmental Plan, how to apply it, what it means, practical advice and a chance to ask questions. This particular one, so my team provides technical land history advice to across council, so it's often needed for consenting or for when we're building on land. We know what's the history of this block. We also provide it to support initiatives such as the Heritage Week that the library runs. And so this was a presentation that Ben Manley did with some of the comments. It was shared 19 times and reached 6,500 people. And a quote from one of our staff members in the library team, this is a spectacularly good organic, meaning unpaid, reach. We reached a huge amount of the community with this one. People share it and watch it because they're interested. They want to know about our community. So the work we do around building community and identity is extremely popular with our people. This photo here is one of the monthly waiata sessions, obviously before alert levels prevented such large gatherings. And you can see on the bottom right there, Clark Perika. He used to run these in his own time, just as something that he did because he enjoyed it. He has since at the beginning of this year moved to my team full time, really in recognition of the huge amount of work he does around making the Māori language, Te Arawa history, accessible and connecting people. It's really important. It's not just a waiata session. It's an opportunity for people to experience a little bit of the Te Arawa worldview, to practice language and to learn about the places and the names that are important to Te Arawa. That's what songs convey and very popular. And a photo from one of our noho marae that we run for staff. So because of the uncertainty, we've got one happening at the moment, and at this time it's being hosted at Te Puia because they're able to accommodate social distancing, and we've tried to have different format to enable things to continue. Sorry, mana ki te mana. Formal relationships with Te Aroha groups remain central to the partnership. So I've talked about day-to-day relationships. There are also the formal relationships that we have. It's a lot of work, and I want to thank the elected members for the support that you provide, particularly around the leadership meetings. So there is a monthly chair and mayor meeting with Te Aroha Lakes Trust and with Te Tatau o Te Aroha. Te Aroha Lakes Strategy Group, which I think is every 2 months, and 6 monthly protocol meetings with a number of iwi and iwi representative groups. This year we also attended 13 hui with iwi and hapu, plus the Pukinga Koeke o Te Aroha and Te Tatau o Te Aroha about the redevelopment of exhibitions for Te Wharetanga o Te Aroha. Representation, another couple of big milestones for our team and for the council. The decision to adopt Māori wards, a huge amount of work put into that, and the decision to seek a local purpose bill, which Una's already referred to. Challenges. Community fatigue, as I said. It's hard getting people engaged in things because everybody's tired. People are concerned about gathering. There are a huge number of engagement processes from the government around housing reform, Three Waters, all sorts of big things, and people are tired. Navigating disagreements, they're inevitable. In a strong partnership, you are able to work through them, but it is a challenge, it's hard. Continuing to embed values into policies and procedures. So the spirit is willing, but the body isn't always able to get across everything. And so just trying to ensure that we've got, across everything we do, a Māori perspective and a Te Aroha lens is an ongoing challenge because there is so much that we do as an organisation. Ensuring authentic expressions of Te Aroha values and identity and quality Te Reo Māori, again, it's not just about attractive patterns and designs at the end of a process, it's about everything that goes through it to ensure that what we're doing is authentic and real. People can tell when it's not. So next year, implementation of any IAF funding will require an iwi partnership approach. The government has signalled that very clearly. They want to know how we will deliver that. Plan changes will also require early engagement with mana whenua. The introduction of the local purpose bill around our preferred representation model, and continuing to enable the development of our community, including Te Aroha. And is this the last one? I think it is. Yes. Continuing to work across the whole of council to build capability, experience, and to provide policy and guidelines. So that's the focus for next year. I'll also be much better next year at pulling out my camera and recording the cool things that our community celebrates. Kia ora. Any questions?
Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Gina. Once again, looks like a very hectic year. And so just a couple of simple questions around some understanding. You have expressed some note there regarding mana whenua perspective. So the investment of Rio rollout, if measured, does it recognize Rotorua as complete or work in progress?
I think we should always be a work in progress because there are always more people. Everybody's on a journey. When it comes to Te Reo Māori, everybody is on a journey. Whether you are an expert or a beginner, everybody's got some. We're all learners, and it's really important to understand that you don't stop your journey and reach a magic level of competence. And so there will always be continued learning opportunities for staff and community. Some of the things that we've done this year around Rotorua include we've produced Te Reo Māori signage guidelines. So there were a lot of people who wanted to do signage, but there wasn't consistency across the organisation. So we produced guidelines on how to do high quality signage. Google as Translate is not our friend is a really key message. A number, people often, they want to use Te Reo Māori, and so they will try and translate it themselves, and that's really not a safe way of going about things. So introducing guidelines as well as the direct assistance. So we translated over 210 requests this year from across council for translations. I don't see that the demand will drop off.
Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson, followed by Her Worship the Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Thank you for your presentation, Gina. It's quite profound for me. And I think what you've demonstrated is not only that strong partnerships are key to delivering major projects, but and as Una's numbers of engagement showed, art is important to our community, and certainly cultural art is not only an expression of great to look at stuff, but also our identity. And also localism is important. And you highlighted the joint consent for Te Puna.
Peke Haua.
Yep, thank you, Tony Farr, as I call it. So that one, but also we've lodged a joint application for a bridging consent for the wastewater treatment plant. Now that's a journey that we've been on since 2012 to upgrade our wastewater treatment plant, and it's stumbled at various points. And with this agenda of centralisation that's been with us for some time, so my question is, are you involved in any of the work around the local government review? Because I don't see centralised entities, be they centralised local government or centralised standalone appointed entities, being able to do effectively any of the work that your team are doing to support the projects that are vital to our community going forward in terms of just infrastructure as one example.
What I would say about the various reforms is that they, as far as we can see, and noting that they're still in development, that there tends to be an approach of you locals tell us what you want and we'll go and deliver it because we know how to deliver. I just don't think that that works, particularly in a Māori context and in a community where so many of our infrastructure assets sit on Māori land and Māori-owned waterways. Because the expectation from Māori communities is that they are involved throughout the life of a project, not that they simply send some KPIs and get a report back at the end of the year. They expect to have some operational relationship. So I think that will be a challenge, particularly in the Three Waters space. I think that's why this council has very strongly advocated that there remains a role for councils in leading those on-the-ground relationships and making sure that local communities are fully engaged in what's happening on their taonga.
Thank you very much. Your Worship.
Thank you, Gina, and in your quiet way, you've made us feel comfortable about the role of Te Aroha Partnerships and the Amorangi unit that you work with. One of the capacity issues that I see looming very, very clearly, and Councillor Donaldson talked about the future local government review, RMA, Three Waters, is capacity of workforce. And I feel very much that we are not gearing up as a country to face really those challenges together in partnership. So that's one question. And the other, and you mentioned that partnerships are always, they're tricky. And they have their high points, as we've seen with the lakefront and Whakariwariwa and many of the sewage projects that we're doing here with wastewater and stormwater. The Te Aroha vision that we had presented you know, we're sort of trucking along well with Te Tato or Te Arawa, but it needs something else to make it really embedded, and it's not only about the electoral review. How do you see that as we work together?
I think the strength of a relationship is not how it looks in the good times. It's about how it looks in the bad times and how you work things out. That's what defines the longevity and the strength of any partnership. And so I know that Te Tatau and Council are committed to working together and to finding a way through. I also know that ultimately we're all here for the same thing. And so I have every confidence that in whether it's representation review or anything else, that we will continue to work pokohiwi ki te pokohiwi, shoulder to shoulder, to try and address those concerns. And certainly from council perspective, we're committed to that.
Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Gina. And I used to hear Modi Ora when he used to be around the table with us also say those lovely words you said, but he also added pokakohua ki te pokako as well. But I want to be very positive about that. Thank you for all the mahi you and the Amorangi unit are doing for us, and wonderful to see the achievements that has been displayed on the screen. I can't let this go without saying a big thanks for Te Puna o Pekehau at Taniwha Springs. For me, I didn't think it was going to happen in my time on council. When in 1966, the dreaded Public Works took the springs and the way away from Ngāti Rangiwewehi, but it was achieved. And not only that, to think that the tribe, because of the partnership arrangements and everything, and you've been a big part of it, have worked together and have gone and now got a New Zealand first where we nationally first joint successful. And COVID has done that to many people and hasn't allowed us to celebrate it with council yet. But we'll get around to that. But big thanks to you and the team and Jeff and all the staff of council also. And you highlighted Te Pūtake o Tawa. Tūhaurangi are still talking about it. I love it. They're still talking about it. And the lakefront is going to come on board. I mentioned earlier, if we get that playground opening before Christmas and everything, that's going to add to our children's enjoyment. And finally, can I mightn't get the opportunity to say this, but Your Worship, you have said you're standing down next year, but I want to say a big thank you. A lot of the achievements under your leadership, I think, would not have happened. And I say that openly. A big thank you, not only from our tribe, but tātou katoa. Ke te mihi o kia koe, tēnā koe. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Yates.
Tēnā koe, o tira, through you, Madam Chair, kia koe, Gina. Nei rā te mihi kauatu. Tēnā koe. Kei te mohi o hau I ēnei mō āhuatanga mō a tātou nei kaimahi. Mo te reo, ko te reo. Kei wainga I a tātou. He mea motuhake. So to sit here as a Māori councillor, knowing that our staff are taking on board the learning of our precious language, knowing that they see the benefit of not only our language but our cultural importance and relevance in this space, is such a warmth for me walking into council, knowing that our kaimahi treasure who we are too. The Rotorua Township Agreement and with the work that the Amorangi unit do is so significant. But it's a subtle significance that is often transpired across social media or in other platforms that unfortunately our own local media don't capitalise on. The stories that come out of the Amorangi unit, including Te Aka Mauri, so I have to acknowledge all our team behind you there too, it goes across, it transfers across the whole of council. It's not just in one pocket. And the work that you specifically do across that is huge. And we do actually see it in every one of our council meetings. But it goes with little acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge you on behalf of Tarawa for everything that our unit does. You're at every one of our hui. If not you, one of the team, you're at every one of the pōhiri. The expectations when it comes to marae and council involvement is huge. So I do want to express that. I want to express that with my emotional intent, because ka pā kia au. Wau, ko koe, ko au. Kia ora.
Kia ora. And can I just say, going through the photos and seeing all the work that my team does, I was really proud of them. I just wanted to really highlight how much they do, because they really do care. It does make it hard, and I'd say this is across all of our council teams. Our staff care about this community, and so it's not something you just leave at the door when you go home. You know, you're in your community, and it is, you know, something that everyone has to kind of carry day in and day out. But I think we all love working for our people, for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Ngā mihi ki a koe, Gina, mo tō mahi tēnei tau. Thank you so much for the work that you've done this year, and Councillor Yates has just summed it up perfectly. We're very grateful, and I think if you look back, it really wasn't that long ago where there was very little of our reo and tikanga within this building and within the community, but now we are acknowledging and honouring those partnerships that we have with iwi and letting them reach their aspirations as well, because we are all aiming for the same thing, which is a thriving Rotorua community. So thank you very much, Gina. We would now move to our community wellbeing group. I think, who wants to present on that one? All of us. Yeah, you might want to bring a couple seats. So we're welcome to the presenter's spot. We've got Rob Pikethley, Amy Stewart, Laura from Te Aka Mauri, Kurt and Rosemary and Jill. So it's going to be a team effort today, but welcome, and we'll hand it over to you for your presentation on the Community Wellbeing Group. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, ko Amy McGregor aho. I have the pleasure today of introducing our team for this session. So on behalf of the Community Wellbeing team, we're excited to be here today to reflect with you on what has been an especially challenging year, but also a very rewarding one, with a shift from being known as the Operations Group to being known as Community Wellbeing, and an associated, I guess, increased focus on delivering value for our community. Now, there's 6 delivery areas, with each leader responsible for presenting their areas today. So I'll just take you through who you're going to see. Okay, so we're going to start with community safety, which we'll get to shortly, then the strategic community asset development, then moving on to active and engaged communities. Then we'll hear from Stuart in terms of the culture, heritage and mahi toi, Laura for Te Aka Mauri, and Rosemary in the thriving communities space. So I'll let each of the team take you through their areas now.
Kia ora, and thank you for having us here today. I know you've all had a fairly comprehensive update in the community safety space fairly recently, so I'd just like to really recap on a few of the main points of where we're currently at in community safety and what the last year has looked like for us. So over the last 12 months, the adoption of our draft community safety plan has been a major milestone in helping us to collaborate in the way that we need to and adopt the approach that we need to make Rotorua's public spaces the safest in Aotearoa. So throughout the year, this has helped us to shape our response through the clear visions and objectives that are contained in that document, which you all approved. So thank you for that, for helping us with that guidance. Over the course of the year, we have made some great headway in various parts in this space, with plenty more still to come over the next 12 months. A crucial part of the response over the year has been in relation to our partnerships. So we've continued to strengthen our partnerships, in particular with the police, and adopt new ways of working, sharing information, data and intel to put us in a better space to better help the community. Other key stakeholders, such as the Māori Wardens and Community Patrol New Zealand, are also on the radar as we move into the new year to help further strengthen the partnerships that we're already working within and improve our community safety outcomes, of course. I'd previously touched on too that part of this will involve rebranding in the new year to make sure that when our teams are out and about across the community, that they are easily associated with a community safety result and outcome that we're out there for. And just to remind them that community safety is a top priority for this council and our partners. So some of the things through that, of course, that we will aim to achieve in that space is improving Rotorua's reputation as well, increasing the positive perceptions of safety of Rotorua, and also quite naturally a reduction in the antisocial and criminal activities. Key in that space as well, particularly on the back of the COVID challenges that we all face, is continuing to do what we can to help those in need, particularly in relation to putting them in touch with support services, and in particular around housing-related issues. So last time we spoke to you about community safety, we spoke around sort of more of the high-end sorts of things, but there's a lot of other factors that we're currently also attending to, which are more low-level issues in the community, but they also have a direct impact on perceptions of safety. So these are things such as graffiti, litter, rubbish dumping, a proliferation of shopping trolleys around the place. All of these things just give the sense that things aren't quite as tidy as they could be. So there are lots of conversations going on at the moment. To give you an example, tomorrow there's a conversation that we're having with Unison around how we can better treat graffiti on the power boxes around the places. They are quite a common target for that type of activity. And as well as trying to tidy up the shopping trolley side of things in conjunction with the supermarkets. So as you're also aware, to be in the best position that we can, we have continued to grow the capacity and capabilities of the Safe City Guardian team. So last time that we met to speak to you, I spoke about our recruitment in that space. So really pleased to report that we have been able to recruit in the Foot Patrol Guardians side of things. Still working towards the CCTV monitoring, but both of those aspects are crucial to do what we need to for the community. That will also enable us to go out further, or continue going out further. And just to touch on Councillor Kai Fong's question earlier as well, we're about to increase our visibility in and along Fenton Street and the surrounding neighbourhoods. That will involve, as well as in the CBD, connecting with those businesses and individuals to ensure that they know for criminal matters they must call 111, for things that aren't criminal but are still of interest or concern, 105 for anything else, or antisocial activities. It's our Guardian team through our council network. So that's definitely on the radar to ensure that we're in the best space across the summer period. The COVID-19 lockdowns, we've also continued to provide additional support and visibility through there, which is where, of course, our current vehicle patrols originated. We're continuing to spread out wider and further with those patrols, and some of the benefits of that will mean that we don't have multiple staff or contractors visiting the same spaces all in one day, and also just around other efficiencies in that space and visiting spaces that we might otherwise not have visited. But we're also continuing to work very closely with Council's Information Solutions team around the phased expansion of the CCTV network, which we spoke about quite heavily in the last presentation. So the community safety space, I'd just like to touch on a couple of other areas that I guess go somewhat unseen, but have also been out there working really hard for our community to make a difference. Starting with our animal control team, over the course of this year, they have managed to, particularly through our Homeless Hounds Facebook page, rehome 117 dogs this year, which is quite phenomenal. So it is actually up slightly on last year as well, and that's fantastic to see. So out of the 906 dogs that were impounded over the space of the year, they'd also managed to reunite 539 of those dogs with their owners. So that doesn't come without a lot of hard work and dedication in that space. Also, with the challenges for the community around finances and COVID, they've also worked tirelessly around things such as dog registration, which is very important, but to ensure that they can give, where they can, as much leniency as possible, or assist them to get into a position where they can actually take care of those important responsibilities. Over the next year, we'll also see an increase in what we can do in the education space around being responsible dog owners. The pictures to the right of the screen just demonstrate some of the other things that come across our licensing team's desk. So we do have a reasonable number of reports of abandoned vehicles, partially blocked out by the puppies, that our team go through the right processes to remove and ensure the amenity values in our communities. Also, a little bit hard to see, but up on the right is an example of a property that we work hard with, particularly around with links in through the Health Act, to ensure that we do what we can to restore pride in neighbourhoods and assist people out of situations such as that. Moving forward, one of the other things that we will be looking at, which also tees into some of those spaces, is definitely increasing our efficiencies and capabilities in the RMA or district plan compliance space as well. But overall, the regulatory team has certainly helped over the year to have an important impact on the safety, the quality of life and sense of community pride and sense of belonging in our neighbourhood, and are doing their very best to improve the life experience of locals and visitors in our community. So I'd like to now hand over to Amy.
Kia ora, Kurt, thank you. Okay, so my role is around strategic community asset development, and I guess my focus is on ensuring that not only are we delivering lots of beautiful gardens and concrete and bricks and mortar, but we're actually delivering value for our community and outcomes for our community alongside of our partners. So I'll just touch on some of the major achievements for the year. So it'll be a bit of a whirlwind tour of what has been quite a volume of work in quite pressing times with COVID in terms of the challenges that places in the construction industry with supply of resources and materials and restrictions and so on. So Lakefront started in late 2019, the site established, and this year was a year of delivery. So just you'll see here on the slide that in April we had delivered the Memorial Plaza, which is stage 4. In July we delivered the Lakefront Boardwalk, which is known as stage 1, and we're very excited in 2 weeks' time to be opening the playground, stage 2, and also the connection piece between the Lakefront Boardwalk, the playground and the village green. So that will be opening on Friday the 17th of December, ready in time for our community and our visitors to enjoy that fabulous space. So I'm just going to also, while I'm here, quickly tell you about what's coming next year. Here we go. So next year is also another big year for the lakefront, quite focused on the western end. So we'll finish off the boardwalk, so the western end of the boardwalk near the operator jetties there. We'll also be delivering a whare waka, which is being designed by local architects DCA in conjunction with Lionel Grant, Te Arawa artist. It's a bit of an impression there of what you'll get, or the community will get. And the dedicated toddler play space and stage 6, which is another parking area to provide, I guess, people access to park when they're coming to visit this amazing place. And I guess, again, we're not just there to be building structures, we're there to actually create an amenity of what is a really important place, to make it an amazing experience. So also next year, the Cultural Foundation artworks will be coming into play. And again, that will elevate the whole experience and give all the stories that Gina talked about in terms of that hikoi that we did, will elevate them in the place. Moving on to another project that I'm working on is the museum restoration. So again, this is about actually providing us as a community and as a nation access to a Category 1 heritage building. There's a lot of work. It's a very challenging site. As you would, I guess we've recently had a prime example of the bore failure just sort of 100 metres away in terms of the geothermal challenges. She's also a very old building built with many different types. So this is just a bit of a snapshot page here in terms of the complexity and what we're doing here around really trying to work with the integrity of the building and its own structure and work out how do we strengthen what's there versus sort of build anything new, a whole kind of new structure inside of her. So the concept design is now complete, and next year we'll be focused on actually getting started on site. Still a bit of work to go before we do that, but that is the plan. Performing Arts Centre. Okay, so this one, gosh, only just over a year ago, looked like the top photo there and some of those photos underneath. So it's been quite a transformation in a relatively rapid time frame. The photos too don't really give it justice because there's just so much work going on in every space. So there's almost every area apart from, I guess, the change rooms behind has been touched and upgraded and strengthened and fortified because it was needed, quite frankly. We needed to provide a functional facility that provides also that sense of identity in terms of how we present it and our history, but also a fabulous performing space. So this is just some of the I guess stuff that's going on behind the scenes in terms of all the services, all the earthquake strengthening, some very, very strong precast panels going in there in the green room, other spaces around in terms of that's, I think, the office space that's coming in. You can see now she's starting to be unwrapped, all of the plaster work, which of course was very challenging with respect to dealing with cracks and asbestos earlier in the year. The concert chamber, again, earthquake strengthening. And I've just jumped on too far, but we'll stay there. So next year's focus will actually be unveiling the centre to the community, and Sian's team are doing a great job in terms of booking in a diverse array of shows for our community, of which we of course hope that we have sellouts every time, and we'll enjoy this amazing facility. I think that is me, so I'll pass over to Rob.
Kia ora koutou. The other big project that we've been working on obviously has been the forest. Now that's been going for a couple of years now, so we in previous years we've done Te Tokarangi Drive, major upgrades there, and also built Te Putaki o Tawa, which was constructed last year. This year, again, we've been focusing on a lot more delivery work around the forest, with the significant project being the Great Ride. So there's a loop within the forest that's now been completed, and a very large part of the completion of that, as Gina spoke to before, was the Tiko Tukutuku Trail extension, which required a lot of work with our key partners, mana whenua as well, and CNI and the forest managers, and also our trail builders in there. So, and that has created a 8-kilometre long single track, which is probably one of the finest tracks in the whole forest. And all this is around, as long as you stay on your bike, it's very good for you. There's a lot of individual wellness and health and fitness that you can get out of these things, and that sort of corresponds and relates to a real sense of place and community well-being. So there's some significant values that this sort of riding opportunity is going to provide in there. And another thing, just for a note, that bottom right-hand picture, that's an adaptive MTB, or an adaptive mountain bike, which is a power-assisted mountain bike for disabled riders. We are the only Great Ride off-road that allows that to happen now, in terms of a fully accessible forest loop. There's 22 Great Rides in the country. This hasn't been designated a Great Ride yet, but the intention is that we will get it swapped from our old Te Ara Ahi Ride which is a great ride to this one. And we've certainly got some significant offerings that also correspond and relate to commercial opportunities for the landowners as well as for other businesses associated with. So part of those wider benefits as well as well-being will be around what opportunities can we create for economic growth potential. The other thing, of course, that's happened in the forest, which we've already talked about, is the cultural taonga at Tiputaki Otawa. And there's a series of carvings that were produced by local tūharangi. The first one on the gate, Ki te Tāniko, and then if you haven't been there, you've got to get there. It's a fantastic place. It provides such a sense of place to the forest and is all part of this cultural foundation work that adds on to what makes Rotorua uniquely Rotorua. You know, as you go in the gate, Umakarea there, the chief is keeping a pretty good eye on everything. And then we go to Wahio, the chief's son is in the middle of the car park, and then Kataori, the taniwha that lived on the side of the hill, which fantastic stories and interpretations around these taonga, and again, it's all part of that value add that we've got. And of course, finishing with Henima and Te Tanakai, which are on the sort of boundary area of where we go from the Tuarangi rohi into Ngāti Whakaui rohi. And just in terms of what's happening next year, we've got the Cultural Foundation for the Ngāti Whakaui side of the forest on Titokarangi Drive. That'll be delivered in sort of April, May. There's a bit of your taonga was pretty cool. Ours is going to be cooler. So we're looking forward to seeing how that pans out. But all that work's happening at the moment. Thank you. So coming up next year, another big project that we've got is the Aquatic Centre. So we'll be briefing council on this early in the new year. But we've got some significant expression of interest out at the moment for the major construction work. And a lot of the building will actually be going through a tender process, which we'll be coming back to you with, construction, and all that will be rolling in through next year. Now going into the highlights, so Lucky stays on this, active and engaged community highlights. For us, it's been a year really around sort of trying to lift our assets. We've got a lot of assets out in our parks and open spaces, and we need to lift the quality of those. There's been underinvestment in the past, so we're working pretty hard on this. And again, it involves working with partners. You'll see that we've done some significant playground work, and again, in places like working with Te Tahuna Trust out at Rotoiti, Hinihopu for that. We've done work, also the Lakes Community Board have assisted us with some of these asset works. And again, it's all around making sure those partners are involved and what we can do to improve our outstanding places to play, because again, that all contributes towards community wellness. The middle image of trails in the forest, we've added about 17 kilometres of trails to the forest network this year, which is over 10%. It's probably the biggest single addition to the trail network in about the last decade. And again, the other thing, a lot of ecological work is happening, so that's part of the work that the council's moving into, which we probably haven't touched on historically, but our sanatorium is a classic example of that, where there's a lot of work also happening now to lift the quality of our assets to get better value for our community. And Aquatic Centre, of course, the other area in the active and engaged communities around sport development. Significant work in the Aquatic Centre, so hopefully you've all seen the 50-metre pool. And a lot of work happened this year in the events sector. We've had a significantly disrupted year for events. We ended up probably delivering about half the events that normally came to us. A lot of the big events happen in that winter period in terms of numbers. You know, a lot of the school events are in that August, September, October period, which was COVID affected. A lot of work reshuffling with those events, making sure they have other opportunities. And it's not only in that sports sector, but Stuart will tell you about what's happened in the other event sectors as well. So I'll hand over to Stuart, and he can go through his areas.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Last year can only be described as one of juggling and pivoting. You've got an empty calendar there with not much on it, because if we started the year it would have been full, and we've had to keep rescheduling and postponing. One of the things I am particularly proud of with the team, particularly around business events, is that we've been able to reschedule those events without any cancellations. So that revenue stream of around $70 million that comes into the community is now just slid to 2022. So we're happy about that and very busy. We've also taken the opportunity, while the event centre hasn't been able to hold events, to bring forward our maintenance. So maintenance is generally quite difficult for us. We only have a period of about 8 weeks, December, January each year, to do that maintenance. So we've brought that forward and be able to get that done as soon as possible. And we've continued to deliver events in Alert Level 2 where we can, re-establish the markets, initially with Food Truck Thursdays, and now we're back into full swing. These are some of the activities that happened, really just about that placemaking and keeping the CBD vibrant. This was a series of chalk art, a lot of this done by our community. Once again, chalk art on the pavement art, and so these artists would turn up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and paint something, draw something in the city, and then people would be surprised as they walked around the city the next day. And these are all low-cost stuff as well, which has really helped us in terms of controlling costs this year. And then the murals, working with the community once again, so the Butcher's Pool there up on the left, which community led and request. Obviously the Meritai mural, one of the biggest murals in the Southern Hemisphere, which was done in partnership with the Aranui Trust. And then continuing on with the Linmore School project, which is really to make the school a little bit more interesting, exciting, vibrant for kids. But this was also part of a wider project designed to slow down traffic around that school area, which has worked really, really well. And also the work we've done this year in securing 660 at the stadium next year. So that's our first large-scale concert for a number of years, and it's already about 55% sold out. I'll now hand over to Laura.
Tēnā koutou katoa. So it was very hard to pick some highlights from our large and diverse team, but it was really nice to hear from the other departments as well how we're working across council, and they do a fantastic job of that. So a very old school highlight, but for us, a 5% increase in issues compared to last year is a massive achievement. It's turned around a 5-year decline in our lending, and lending is extremely important in terms of wellness and educational outcomes. So the team's done a fantastic job, and the results have been moderated based on actual opening days. So we've managed this by having a really strong data-driven collection management plan, but also enabling access through all sorts of different ways. We have a starter card for those in emergency accommodation, fines free, no ID required. We do reading programs with parents teaching their kids how to read, and we're also one of the largest facilitators of Skinny Jump, which is a low-cost broadband brought about by the Spark Foundation to enable vulnerable communities to connect. And obviously the huge shift has been in the e-lending, but again, that's just showing us helping people move into the future. Our next highlight is really about our community-led events, the other side of our story. So these are just some of the events and partners that we've worked with over the last year. And to me, this is the beginning of what does a community hub looks like. It involves the community doing what they want to do. And that just shows a little bit about what that is. That was advanced care planning in conjunction with the hospice. And our next highlight was our youth and early learning team, who've just done a fantastic job this year with increasing the program activities. And again, they've pivoted more towards after-school activities, the outreach activities, and what they can do to get children involved. And one of those real standouts was our technology event participation, which, as you can see, has increased massively. And that's our Aquabots, our e-Velocity. So we run the largest regionals in the country. Our teams can now present in Te Reo Māori, and we have 43% female and 25% Māori participation. Still needs an improvement, but really that's quite a fantastic response in terms of what's happening in the nation. And why? Why do we care about kids participating in events? And it gives them an informed choice, career pathways that help build team skill and also gives them some connection. But one of our particular highlights for the team this year was something called a busy bag. So this went out to over 2,500 children, and this was during COVID. It was how to have fun and literacy and development in your own home. And the kids sent us pictures of them enjoying the activities. These were delivered to children in emergency houses. They also go out through the DHB during the wellness checks as well, and we're preparing another 800 of these for this coming year, so children that are stuck at home during COVID, especially emergency housing, will have access to these sort of programs. And of course, just a snapshot of some of our events, e-Velocity, Aquabots and RoboCup. And as I said, the basis for this is we don't even only work with the undisturbed to give them career choices. We also work with the top 5% as well, because these are going to be your business innovators of the future. Thank you. And I'll just hand over to Rosemary.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I have Jill at my side here because she is my right-hand woman. We began the year as part of the strategy team, and now we're part of the community wellbeing team. But in reality, we work right across the organisation and out into the community with lots of people, so I'm not quite sure we belong anywhere in particular. We started the year off doing emergency housing, working with the task force, working with HUD, Kāinga Ora, MSD. That's a really difficult space. It's ongoing, but some of the critical things that we wanted to achieve are well underway. And I think the other work is the district development team progressing around actually developing housing is really the answer to that particular problem in the long term. The East Side locality planning, so that's been developed, and I think you've received updates on that quite recently, so I wasn't going to talk about that in too much detail. Our climate action plan got completed. It seems a long time ago, but it was this year. And we just got our score back, having submitted that to the Carbon Disclosure Project internationally, and we got a B, which is actually really good. We're actually really highly rated for the Oceania Pacific region, and that's really reflects the work that we've got a plan in place, and now the work is really with Stavros' team largely to be implementing a lot of that work. The community safety plan was developed, and then that's really been handed over to another team to be implementing, and that's well underway. The child equity program, really I wanted Jill to tell you about that because this is really her passion, and she's highly effective at engaging with a wide range of people to actually make that happen. And at the end of this presentation, we've got a little video from all of the people, or a very small snapshot of all the people that we provide community funding to through the team. So that's a range of different funds, and yeah, it seems like a task sometimes, but when you see the results in the community, it's all worthwhile. So, Jill.
Kia ora. With regards to the Child Equity Program, we've been doing this, we're in our third year now. Really the kaupapa around the Child Equity Program is around disrupting the poverty cycle for our tamariki and encouraging our kids to dream big. So when we had a look 3 years ago around our deprivation index, our children ranked far too high. And what we were looking at is how do we make an impact as a council? So we have been pulling on our partners. We have been working in partnership with this year 5 growing into 6 or 7 new kura. And so we sit around the table and really look at what do we need to do to address barriers? How do we improve access? How do we provide opportunities for our tamariki to dream big? And what do we need to do to disrupt systems to reduce inequities? And I don't think Laura has blown her horn loud enough, but the library has done a fantastic job. And so when we were looking at the Child Equity Program, what we started with was council services. And some of the things that the library has been delivering has been a great example. Experiences are a big part of the Child Equity Program, so ensuring that our tamariki are not sitting on the sidelines because whānau may not have funds to participate in sport or those extracurricular activities. The Aquabots program, a variety of library programs and services are on there. We have our own Steve Watney up there, and Steve participates in the Big Brothers Big Sisters Mentors in Schools program. You may not be aware, but we have 10 or 11 of our staff that go in once a week to
be mentors to young people at some of the schools that we partner with. This year, we also had a job fair. This is our second consecutive year running the job fair, and all of those partners listed, a variety of them came in, sat and spoke with the tamariki around what they did in their role. The kids all had to go around and ask questions and learn a little bit about the variety of jobs and career options out there. The last photo there is the ukulakis. So Sunset Primary School, now Aorangi Primary School, have ukulele orchestras. And that, again, is something that we'll look to grow into next year with a partnership of the Rotorua Music School, who are changing some of their processes, realizing that they had some barriers put in place. They now are going to be going into the kura rather than just being at Western Heights High School. They will be providing their services in some of the kura that we're working with. These experiences have, I think Gina really touched on, relationships and making change takes time. And the photos up there are examples of this. So I'll use Sunset Primary School as an example, where the schools were not accessing the free swim programs at the Aquatic Center. So we have a Making a Difference free swim program. They signed up and the whole school started to participate. From there, a partnership was born with Te Wairiki Puria Trust. They have a Y swim safety program. So now from a school who were not accessing any water safety programs, they now get 5 free lessons at the Aquatic Center. They also do some other safety programs there. They then go to the awa, the rivers, the lakes, the ocean with Te Wairiki Puria Trust, and learn how to swim and maneuver in the water in the areas where we have really high instances of drowning rates. So Te Wairiki Puria Trust are the partner in that partnership with the schools that we're working with. That last photo is of a young man from Sunset Primary School who ranks in the top 4 of our chess champions. So a real big part of the Child Equity Program is around access and participating and giving things a go that they might not otherwise have done. Places to play, so again, looking at bikes in schools, so again, another kind of council partnership and initiative. We have a number of our lower decile schools who now have bikes in schools, but they now are giving it a go on the BMX track. They now are giving it a go in the forest where they wouldn't have otherwise had those opportunities. So again, looking at youth voices, tamariki voices, we had young people input into the bike tracks, as well as our long-term planning process.
Most of our work is around connecting, collaborating, maximising the value out of small parts and really trying to address what the barriers are to be really effective. So Council gives a lot of money out to the community, and this has been a really big year where we give out the 3-year grants. So the Neighbourhood Matching Fund, our small community grants, our partnerships, and Te Rākau Pakari Fund. So this is just a little video from the recipients.
Kia ora, my name is Sharon Black. I'm the General Manager of St Chad's. And one of the biggest things that I learned when I arrived here was the Partnership Fund. We're lucky enough again this year to be a recipient for the next 3 years.
So we are a community and learning center for adults with disabilities. I think the funding has been really beneficial for us because we've been able to help our clients learn those life skills that are really necessary for them to be able to live independently in the community. We were able to purchase resources, which meant that our clients could practice gardening, card making, so many different things just to help with communication, to help them work together as a team and make those choices that are going to make that life possible.
The Rotorua Arts Village is a community arts center where our vision is to make life good in Rotorua through the arts.
We hold exhibitions, workshops, we offer spaces for community groups. Whānau, they can come in and hold their kaupapa here. We have Studio One, we have this mosaic as another gallery space, and also we have the cottage, Studio 2, where anybody can come in and run workshops. And we also have outside area too. Here at the Arts Village, we receive the partnership agreement funding, and that funding goes towards operational and project.
It just provides like a big mattress or cushion. The riders can.
We're just thinking we might email a link of that to our elected members. It looks like a wonderful video, but we can't quite hear what they're saying.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a little snippet from the range of people who receive grants, and yeah, it's very well received in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our presentation today for the Community Wellbeing team. Just before we open up for questions, we do just want to say thank you very much to all of the staff that have obviously done all of this work, because we just get to sit here and talk about it, but it's a large number of people behind us that are actually doing all of this work for our community. So thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We had a question from Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, it's from our second speaker this morning, which was touched on graffiti removal in the CBD. Prior to Castle Corp and now Infracorp taking over the cleaning of the city, it was part of the contract that all graffiti had to be removed from public areas prior to 8 o'clock in the morning. Is this no longer the case? That's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor. It would be fair to say it is something that has just not seen so much priority in recent years, so we're just reinvigorating to get back into that space at the moment.
Thank you for that answer. It appears the level of service may have dropped a wee bit, do you think? My second question with regards to licensing of dogs, are you actively pursuing people that are living in emergency housing, being motels and so forth, that their dogs are licensed?
Yes, we do take the same approach to any dogs that we know of, so it is a little more complicated if the dogs have come from out of town, but we have been making active efforts to get to know what that picture actually means, and yes, when we come across them, the same rules apply.
Thank you. Your Worship, the Mayor.
And I just say a huge thank you. Everything that you do, once upon a time we said we're not core services, but they're absolutely core services to a community that cares about our people and our place. So fantastic work. Great to see it just roll out like that in front of us. The one that moves us most, I think, is the Child Equity Project, just seeing the opportunities that those rangatahi and our children are having in our community to connect with our assets. It's fantastic. And thank you so much. It's sort of lifted our spirits before Christmas. And well done, and keep up the great work together with our partners.
Thank you. Were there any other questions? Councillor Yates?
Not a question, but through you, Madam Chair, just a compliment to Kurt, to Amy, to Rosemary, to Laura, to Stuart, to Rob, to Jill. What a fantastic team to come before us, as you've mentioned, Mayor Steve. And also what an honour to look upon you all and think of Jocelyn and how proud she'd be of this particular group and what you've been able to get through in the most extraordinary times. I'm also well aware that as the community wellbeing group, that each and every one of you are really at the coalface. You are the front-facing part of council that will probably be taking the brunt of most of the hurt tomorrow when we move into a red phase where vaccination passes will be required. So all I can say to each and every one of you and to all of your staff is kia kaha. We've got this and it won't be for too much longer. So bring on summer and bring on 660.
Kia ora. Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to really thank all of you sitting here right now, and I want to delve into every single one, but we're going to sit here probably for well into the evening if I do that. So I'm going to stick to just some points, and really thank each and every one of you and your teams for the work that you guys do. It's very visible and very, very much appreciated. In the community safety area, you know, that it's definitely been a big issue for us, and it's not always the most positive stories and news that we hear. But it's great to see all of that linked in with the child equity program, with really supporting our rangatahi and supporting our tamariki to break that poverty cycle as well. It's great to hear that the community, the guardians and the recruitment of that, it's all going really great. Just to, again, as you mentioned, the perception, changing the perception and restoring the pride as well. In the animal control area, and I've heard from many people who have said this, that our animal control team are probably the best in the country. We might be a bit biased, but I think we are. I did have a quick little question in the animal control area, was the reoffending stats, because you did mention out of the 900 and something impounded dogs, that about 500 or so are reunited with their owners, with their families. How do we have any stats on the reoffending, or how often does that happen?
Thank you, and good question. We are able to pull out that information, absolutely. And I think that speaks to some of the education that some of the team do to try and prevent that reoffending occurring as well. But I couldn't provide you with any stats today, I'm sorry, but I'm happy to see if I can pull that out for you if you'd like.
Thank you. And yeah, moving on to the lakefront, and definitely I've had so many kids ask me when the playground's going to be open, when's the playground going to be open. They are so absolutely so excited to be able to really enjoy what will really become a jungle, a jungle for them. And you know, the ecological work that goes on, as Rob mentioned as well, really, it's great to see. Not just, we're not just maintaining the reserves and the parks and etc., but we're also doing the restoration as well, which was a big part in the Te Arawa climate change strategy that was recently released. And finally, I wanted to put the focus onto the child equity program, and I think definitely for me, it's something that I am just so proud that Rotorua Lakes Council is doing and is engaged in. It's something that when you see those little kids, when you see the rangatahi and the tamariki, the smiles on their faces, and them being able to experience those things that they've never done before, that they have been able to go out on trips, even out of the city. I've talked to some of the kids, some of them haven't even been out of Rotorua before, let alone, to other cities or overseas. And so to be able to provide them with these experiences, it's really just makes your heart, just warms your heart up. It's been a real pleasure to be on with Councillor Kai Fong and Mr. Thomas and Mrs. Trumper on the community grants and the partnership agreements, the funding panel for that as well, to be working and really acknowledging all the great work that the community organisations do as well. And I would like to pass on the message to the team at Te Aka Māori. They really appreciate having that facility there to be able to conduct their meetings and to be able to engage with their community and with their people as well. I won't go on any further. That'll be enough for me, but I hope you all have a great end of year celebration, because that's really, really deserved. So thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Councillor Maxwell.
ditto to everything that's been said before, but I just want to touch on the one, Jill, the Child Equity Program, which you presented to us some time ago with the schools you had. The question I have is the cycling to school and that, in your opinion, are our roads and footpaths safe enough for those youngsters?
Kia ora, through you, Madam Chair. I would say that we would need input from Nikki and the wider kind of road safety, sustainable safety team, driving sustainable journeys team. Yeah, in some of the areas, there's probably some work that could be done. And then in other areas, a lot of work has been done. So it really depends on the neighborhood and the community that we're talking about.
Well, thank you very much to our team. I think when we think of the term community wellbeing, the presentation today just absolutely shows that all of the 4 pillars of that, whether it's social, cultural, economic or environmental, you have just done such incredible work, and as the managers and the leaders of these great teams that are out there, grassroots, doing this stuff for our community, we just want to say that we acknowledge at times the weight of the community can be on your shoulders as well. So we thank you for your service to our community and your service to this council, and what an incredible year you have still managed to have despite all of the challenges. So we appreciate you so much. We're grateful for the work, and we look forward to finishing off some pretty big and exciting projects next year too. So bring on that update next year. But thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation this morning. Kia ora. Now look, I know that we're going back to back with our last committee meetings of the year, so we've asked, and the chair of our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee has agreed, that we'll actually defer the next presentations of Infrastructure and Environment Solutions Group, District Development, and lastly our Chief Executive to the SPNF Committee. So we'll get that review then. We'll wrap up our O&M Committee meeting now so that we can have a good lunch, because we need a bit of refueling after this morning, and we can then not have to rush our Deputy Chief Executives of that area. So the only matter left on our agenda is the confidential minutes. There's nothing confidential in there, so if you're okay, we can move that and confirm that they're true and correct now, in case there was anything to change. Nope, so I have a mover, Councillor McPherson, seconded Councillor Wang, that the confidential minutes of the Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting held 4th of November to be confirmed as true and correct record. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. And as it is the last meeting, I just want to thank our staff, thank our leadership team for such a successful year. I think COVID and housing has distracted what has been a very successful year, and if I can sum it up in the line that I heard today, this was the year of delivery, and we have delivered so much for our community. As we see, there's so many different areas where we have not only matched the performance under such challenging times, but actually well exceeded that too. So we're very proud of our staff and our leadership team that have helped us to get us here. And I'd like to hand the closing words actually to our deputy of this committee, Councillor Yates, and also ask her to wrap us up with a karakia.
Well, kia ora, and thank you through you, Madam Chair. I think I've actually said quite a bit today as the various staff have come up here, but I really liked what you picked up on there around delivering, and it's such a pity. I couldn't help but sitting here thinking that whilst we've come to the end of 2021 for O&M, it's yet we're at the beginning actually of what a new Rotorua will look like. It's actually really, really exciting. 2022 is going to be so exciting for each and every one of us. So, ka waiho noi ho waku kōrero ki kora, nei rā te mihi kau atu kia koe, Jeff, oti rā koutou, katoa te hunga, te ohu kaimahi ki konei, ki te kaunihira, nō reira kia hihiri tātou. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wā te ai te ara, kia turu ki whakataha ai, kia turu ki whakataha ai, haumi e, hui e, tae ki e.
Thank you. I declare the meeting closed.